This is Naked Mormonism.
I pledge my life, all that I may have. I will strive to the utmost of my ability to be what you would want me to be.
It's time to find the truth.
And having set our hand to the plow, we will never look back until this work is finished.
Where is the church heading?
I have faith that the Constitution will be saved as prophesied by Joseph Smith. But it will not be saved in Washington. It will be saved by enlightened members of this church.
The explicit tag is there for a reason. So if you get offended at what's said, it's not for you. But most importantly,
may you ponder the truths you've heard. May they help you to become even better than you were.
Skepticize everything.
Welcome to episode 31 of the Naked Mormonism Podcast, the serial Mormon history podcast. My name is Bryce Blankenagel, and thank you for joining me. Today we are on to part 2 of my discussion with David Michael, all about Zion's Camp. Before doing a quick wrap-up, let me bring David Michael onto the show. We'll get all of his information at the end. We'll give him the elevator speech at the end. But David Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Bryce. Very excited to be back. And it's called the Zion Camp. I wish they needed a better name, like the something militia, the Zion Militia, or Joe's Army, like that. Those have better ring to it.
The thing is like it came to be known as Zion's Camp afterwards, but I think if they were calling it like Zion's Militia on their march down that way, then it might have freaked some people out a little bit more. So maybe they were a little timid with giving it a name.
They were pretending that they weren't an army. That's right, I forgot.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
They were going down.
Why don't you give us the full recap before I just give little tidbits?
Yeah, there you go. They were trying to go down incognito. There was a couple of discussions with people that were riding up to the camp and saying, hey, what was going on? But yeah, for a quick recap, last episode, Joseph, in reaction to the battle for Zion happening at the end of 1833, Joseph decided, I'm going to lead a march to Jackson County, and I'm going to reinstate the Mormons back to their homes that they were chased out of, and I'm going to lend them support and, possibly military support. That was definitely an option, and that's why all these guys were armed. So he went on a quick recruiting trip up into New York, and he attempted to get $2,000 to rescue the bank and rescue the Missourians out of their financial affairs. And he ended up collecting $251.60 out of that needed $2,000. So they got off to a really bad start there. So, there were a lot of tensions building up between the Mormons and the Missourians. And, they come beginning of May, they all gathered in this place called New Portage. It was about 55 miles south of Kirtland, Ohio. And that was the initial staging camp. And after that, they started their trek outwards. And on this trek, so far, we've talked about there were rattlesnakes that were all over the place. And then, of course, Martin Harris boasted that he could handle a snake and not get hurt. And he got bit on the foot, but luckily it wasn't a rattlesnake, so he was all good.
The dummy got lucky.
Lucky. That's the best. Nothing more than that. It was a fluke. But of course, Joseph didn't skip a beat, and he used it as a teaching experience, an object lesson. And, it seems like he did that quite a few times, and we'll talk about those on this episode. Other than that, we talked about Zelph, the white Lamanite.
The white Lamanite. Yeah, the corpse they found, right? Not the
corpse that they found. Yes, yeah. It was. We don't know, skeleton, but apparently it was a thick-set, big white guy. Who knows? And he had a Lamanitish arrow in his ribs.
Yeah, he did. It was very Lamanite, a stone Lamanitish arrow at that.
Stone, yes, well said. So that pretty much covered everything that we were talking about. There were a couple of little instances. Oh, Sylvester Smith, I forgot to mention. There's this guy that keeps recurring throughout the story here. This guy, Sylvester Smith, he was kind of the devil's voice, the devil's advocate throughout the camp the whole time. He was the guy that was murmuring. He was the guy that was sick of eating the shitty food and just dealing with with all of the stuff that they had to deal with. So, Sylvester Smith, he's a guy we got to keep our eye on for this episode as well.
So it does give the impression, though, that not everyone in this camp / militia is as, I guess, gung-ho about their religious faith, right? Because I imagine most of the people there, at least, I don't know, at least a lot of them, right, would have just been like, you tell us what to do, Joe, we'll suffer for you, like, we're all in, right? But this just seems like there's a guy that he's kind of like the first Jack Mormon, it seems, right? Like, okay, I'll go do the thing, but I'm going to whine about it, because he's just complaining, like he's going along, but he just seems really, really grumpy about it. Like he would just rather be doing anything else.
Exactly. It seems like he was one of those guys that all of his buddies were in that room in that same meeting when Joseph was like, I'm going to go lead the march and who's going to join me? And everybody else in the room was like, we'll go. But Sylvester was in the back like, yeah, fuck that noise. And then his buddies were like, dude, come on, it'll be fun. We'll go out camping for a couple months, we'll get there and we'll fight the Missourians and we'll fight for our religious liberties. And he's like, fuck, all right, if you guys are gonna go fight and die, I guess I've got to be there too.
And there's Mormons that go on their mission with that attitude too, right?
Oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure I met one. I met one that was totally gung ho, and the other one was just kind of like, yeah, this does kind of suck. Yeah.
I would say it's probably a majority of them that have this kind of attitude about it. But I don't know, because I've never been out on the mission field. I haven't experienced it. But
good old Sylvester.
He's kind of the archetype for that Jack Mormon that doesn't want to go on this mission here.
I wish we had his diary entry for the day that Joe found Zelf. Like, I would love to have heard what he had to say about that.
That was one thing that was cool about most of what is contained in this episode is, I pulled a lot of it from the history of the church, but there were a lot of dudes that went on this that kept daily journals that, they were keeping up accounts so I could, see something that happened from Joseph's perspective and then also get it from like Heber C. Kimball's perspective and stuff.
Oh, so a lot of those journals have survived?
A few of them have. Yeah, they've been passed down through the families and stuff, or kept in like the LDS or the RLDS archives. So,
have you referenced any of the other ones, or are we kind of sticking with Sylvester just because he sounds the funnest?
No. Sylvester was just like he was just the anti guy there, the guy that wasn't happy about it. But there were the other journals that I did find; those were all like believing, hardcore guys that were like assistants of Joseph. Like Heber C. Kimball and Parley P. Pratt and, P Cubed, we call him, right? So, at the very end of the last episode, this is the paragraph that we left off with, and it was maybe a little bit of a cliffhanger. We'll see. This is Joseph giving a prophecy. Quote, I said the Lord had revealed to me that a scourge would come upon the camp in consequence of the fractious and unruly spirits that appeared among them, and they should die like sheep with the rot. Still, if they would repent and humble themselves before the Lord, the scourge in a great measure might be turned away. But as the Lord lives, the members of this camp will suffer for giving way to their unruly temper. End quote.
Yeah, that's the story of Lehi's family crossing the ocean, right? That's exactly it. There's a few of you are bad apples, so God's just going to send a storm and kill you all, unless they mend their ways. Yeah, same kind of thing.
Yep, they got to repent, and then God will, he'll calm the tempest.
Now, in this case, it sounds like he's calling for a disease of some kind or some sort of plague.
Yeah, die like a sheep with the rot. So, I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to there, but, you got to assume it's some sort of like illness or sickness or something.
Yeah, that's my guess. That's pleasant. Or poison. Or he's going to poison.
Or poison, right? Exactly.
God, I should stop saying that because every time I say something like that, it happens. So I'm worried. Last time, at least no one's holding the snakes trying to get bit. And then, so I'm going to stop saying it.
Well, then we go to not so smarty Marty.
Yes. So please tell me Joe didn't poison these people. I'm just scared now.
All right, we'll talk about it.
Oh,
so once, after this happened, Joe gave this prophecy. We have an entry on the June 4th to the 5th. That's when they arrived at the Mississippi River, the borderland between Illinois and Missouri, right?
Good old Missouri.
And they spent 2 days ferrying all of the stuff over the river because they didn't have, I think they had like 3 rafts for getting all of the stuff over for, almost 200 guys at this time.
Well, not only that, the Mississippi River is like one of the widest rivers in the world. It's like, in some places it's over a mile wide.
That's crazy. Yeah. So I can't even imagine how frustrating that would have been. And, this is springtime as well. It probably would have been at high flow as well. I can only imagine that they were just fighting that constantly. It must have been a pain in the ass. But
it sounds like they all made it. So that's good.
They made it, yes. But it did take 2 days.
But for all we know, that was record time. God might have been speeding the wind for them or something. Yeah, I don't know how long it would take.
Sure, why not? Kind of like the Jaredites with their submarines.
Sure, we don't know. How do we know that wouldn't work?
Right.
Actually, we do know that wouldn't work. But okay, sorry. Moving on.
Of course it would. So during this 2-day period, our good friend Sylvester Smith raised a voice of dissent again. His company was the last company to cross the river, and he said that Joe's dog growled at him when they were crossing, which Sylvester was angry with. Now, that's what it said in the book. I kind of have a thought that maybe Joe's dog actually bit him instead of growled at him.
All right, I'm gonna be honest, though. Honestly, out of the things that have happened to this group, weren't they like eating just garbage and drinking fetid water because they were like starving to death? And his chief complaint is, this dog growled at me. Like, what? I don't know about the Sylvester guy anymore. He's hard to figure out.
Well, he'd already complained about most other things. He'd complained about the sour bread. At one point, they bought 12 hams, and 6 of them were rotten, and he threw those on the ground in front of Joseph's tent. And, he'd already complained about a lot of other shit. This was just one other thing that he was like, oh, and this is just the shit cherry on top of the shit pie, right?
Yeah.
So when Joe heard about this, he got up on a pedestal and made an example out of it. So, like I said, we're going to get into a couple of those. This is actually, this came from Heber C. Kimball's journal here.
And this is Joseph's response to someone saying, hey, your dog growled at me.
Yes.
And or bit me.
Just wait. Just wait. Okay. Just tell me if this gives you any sort of insight to Joseph Smith. Quote, he rose up and commenced speaking by saying, if any man insults me or abuses me, I will stand in my own defense at the expense of my life. And if a dog growls at me, I will let him know that I am his master. At this moment, Sylvester Smith, who had just returned from where he had turned out his horses to feed, came up, and hearing Brother Joseph make those remarks, said, if that dog bites me, I'll kill him. Brother Joseph turned to Sylvester and said, if you kill that dog, I'll whip you.
What? He just told him, if any dog growled at me, I'd fuck it up. And so Sylvester's like, I will too. And he's like, well, then I'll whip you. He's like, wait.
If you kill my dog, I'll whip your ass.
Wow. So this was listen, there's different rules that apply to me. Or maybe more so like, no, you don't understand, Sylvester. I get to do that because I'm in charge. You are not in charge. And this is what I'm trying to explain to you.
Exactly. I didn't even, it gets even worse. I didn't even finish the passage because it goes on to say, and then went on to show the brethren how wicked and unchristian-like such conduct appeared before the eyes of truth and justice.
But so not only is the unchristian part, what was the unchristian part?
I don't know. Honestly, he was not just an asshole, but he's like a self-righteous asshole about it.
Yeah. I'm still not clear, like, what sin did Sylvester commit at this point? Like, I'm just not entirely clear on it. Maybe threatening to kill a dog, but literally it was seconds after Joe said that's what he would do.
Yeah, I think Sylvester and Joe were not a big fan of each other at the time. I think that's Sylvester was kind of like the poster boy for the voice of dissent that was going on in the camp, and I don't think they saw eye to eye on a lot of stuff. So I think he was just chastising Sylvester for raising a voice of dissent against what he was saying. So,
yeah, fair enough. It just seems like a really weird time to bring it out. But all right, the dog growling incident of 1830 what?
34. yeah, June 3rd.
The great
4th, 1834.
Dog growl incident of 1834. Yes, very dramatic.
Yes. The growl heard round the world.
Was he done?
Yeah, so that was the end of that passage. After that, the next day, Luke Johnson, who we met in Hiram, Ohio, with the John Johnson family. I don't know if you can remember back to then. This was...
let's just say yes.
Yeah, so Marinda Nancy Johnson Hyde Smith Hyde, that was one of Joseph's wives that he was 16 years old when they were living in Hiram, Ohio in the Johnson house. And
then he put him in his little book.
Yeah. Oh, so
poor girl. She got marked.
Yeah, what a sweetheart, right? So Luke Johnson was one of the brothers of Nancy Hyde, and she was him and his brother Lyman were part of the group here, and Luke Johnson was one of the guys that was like running out, taking a horse, riding ahead as a scouting party, and like going out to Missouri and coming back with reports, and then going up to other towns that have Mormon settlements nearby and trying to gather more people or get donations or whatever. So Luke Johnson was kind of like a gopher dude.
Yeah, he was all in.
Yeah, totally.
Hook, line, and sinker.
No doubt. He was ready to go too. So he approached Joseph the next day after this dog growl heard around the world, and said that there were 400 men that were like ready at a moment's notice to mobilize and just completely wipe out Zion's camp.
Ooh. And they were, were they preparing to attack, or were they kind of in a defensive positions, like waiting to ambush him?
I don't know if this answers your question, but that night there were 3 gunshots on the west, which
that sounds like an attacking force then.
And directly after that, there was 1 gunshot to the east, straight east of the camp. So it was like telling the Mormons that they're completely surrounded.
Gotcha. And at this point, they're just like intimidating him with gunfire. Like they're not actually like probably aiming into the camp. They're just like, we want you to know we're here.
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
So that night, and I think they were just like, they wanted to keep everybody on edge too, because that night, of course, Joe beefed up the security detail. He had double guards out everywhere. Nobody was asleep because everybody was worried about an ambush in the middle of the night when they went to sleep. So
probably circled the wagons, as they say.
Yes, everybody dug in, and that was they spent the entire night just in this in this prairie where they were kind of out in the open and didn't have much defensive positions. So,
but in fairness, there were a lot more of them, right, than 400. Like, how big was the Zion camp again?
Zion's camp at this time it was about 160 people, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got the numbers wrong. Okay, so that means they're vastly outnumbered and surrounded.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So if there were indeed 400 men that were mobilizing, ready to ambush, they would have just destroyed them, right?
Yeah.
The Zion's camp, they would just, yeah. So I can understand why they were on edge. And Joseph, in his account, he said, like, I spent the entire night wandering camp without a wink of sleep. And it's like, yeah, I get you. It would have been a little intense to be there.
It would have been hard to fall asleep. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So then after that, on June 6th, the Governor Dunklin, Governor Daniel Dunklin was the guy that he was the governor of Missouri at the time, and he was appointed to kind of take care of this problem, basically.
What? Who asked him to do this? Just the people?
Yeah, well, he was, I guess I shouldn't say appointed, but the responsibility fell on his shoulders to take care of it with, the least amount of frustration or bloodshed or whatever is possible, being the governor.
But it's reached a point. I mean, this is how big a deal this is that the governor had to like find a solution.
Well, yeah, and we were talking about that last episode. I mean, people everywhere knew about it.
Yeah,
there were probably newspapers being written constantly, like hour-to-hour updates all the time. I mean, it was not just a rumor. It was like well known that everything, it was really, it was getting intense.
Recently, it didn't take that many Mormons to go take a bird watching station up in, or is it Oregon?
Right? It was like 12 of them or something. Yeah.
It was like a handful of people, and that like grabbed the media's attention nationwide. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so imagine, in this day and age without, video games and late night television to spoil their brains, people would have been paying attention to this because this is like their only form of entertainment. I mean, we talked about it. It's like the Kardashians, right?
So basically everybody in Missouri is just looking at the governor going, well, what are you going to do?
Right, exactly.
All right, let's see what he does.
So he actually issued a writ to Joseph and to the Mormons saying that, coming into Jackson County fully armed is a really, really, really bad idea. Which I think that's probably a good way to do it. But, you have to put yourself in his shoes because he wasn't sure who was, who really had the high ground, right? The legal high ground. It was really murky waters between if the Mormons should be able to squat on the land that they've been living on for a while, or if the Missourians should be able to chase them out if none of the Missourians want them there. It was really confusing, right?
Yeah. And listen, for all of the non-American listeners to this show, yeah, the thing they were not in trouble for was having 150 guys all openly armed traveling state to state. That actually, in this country, is perfectly fine.
Yep, 100% fine.
That was not being objected to. That's not the issue. Of course you can have a gun.
Actually, with some of the Missourians, a couple of the guys that were handling with the Missourians, their perspective of it, not the Governor Dunklin or his go-to guy, Ryland here, they were calling on the governor, telling him to take the guns away from the Mormons. They were trying to get him to issue an order, like an executive order almost, to outlaw them being able to march so that they could go in with a legal writ saying, hey, you have to disband this militia that you're marching with here.
Yeah, but then you might bring the federal government in because now you violated their constitutional amendments. Or rights.
Exactly. But then it's also like, okay, so you also have a religious leader who is raising up a militia, an armed militia. You don't know what his intentions are. You know that some of the people of this religion had been shot where he's marching to, and he might be seeking retribution. It seems like if you don't do something against it, it's like, an act of negligence almost. So if there was bloodshed, it was going to fall all on this Governor Dunklin's head.
So is that what he decided? I mean, is that why he's, are these 400 guys, are they the governors? And did they go to get their weapons?
The 400 guys, as far as I could tell, there was not 400 guys anywhere at any point that were raised to oppose them.
Oh, so the scout was just wrong?
No, he said he picked up, it looks like he just picked up a rumor, and there was people were talking, there's going to be 400 men, it's going to be a big fight or whatever, and then he probably took that information to Joe and said, hey, they got 400 men that they're bringing to the camp and they're going to assault, or they're going to ambush us or whatever.
And then all they had to do was have a handful of people standing in different directions popping off rounds to make it seem like there were hundreds. No.
Well, and that's why it was at night too. They didn't attack in the daytime or anything. It was like when it started getting dark, when you can't actually see out beyond what's in the immediate vicinity. Who knows how big an army could be out there just popping off random shots.
You don't know what's in the darkness. Walter White did that at the last episode of Breaking Bad when he had the two kids point the laser pointers at their chests, remember? And he's like, I've
right,
exactly. You at any time.
Yep. Same exact thing. Yep. You're afraid of what's in the dark. You're not afraid of being alone. It's afraid of not being alone.
All right. So all the governor's done at this point is basically kind of send a vague threat.
Not a threat. He's just been doing everything possible to try and diffuse the situation. That was the one recurring theme throughout all of his letters.
Okay. So it's more of a pretty please, Joe.
Yes, he was just like, please, this is really ill-advised. The Missourians here are really riled up against the Mormons. They don't like them. The Mormons have already been chased out. Let's find a peaceful solution that everybody can live with. This doesn't have to go down to a gunfight in the middle of Jackson County because, of course, that blood would be on his hands, right?
And not only that, I think the governor would be smart enough to say, and if I have to call in the National Guard, they're not going to be there to fight for you. If there's bullets flying at the Missourians that were born and raised here, yeah, those are the ones that we're going to defend. You outsiders, sorry. So I'm not threatening you, but I hope you understand that. Yeah, I like it. I love it. So I like this governor so far. He's got his head screwed on straight.
There you go. And that would be the what would happen, right? You have it is a militia. The National Guard would be brought in to fight against the foreign militia that was invading this town. That's exactly right. So
if they actually posed physical threat to the townspeople, of course. I mean, that's part of what the National Guard's for, is to keep that from happening, I think.
Mm-hmm. So Governor Dunklin appointed John F. Ryland to oversee the conflict. And he, that was his main directive that I saw throughout all of the letters by this Governor Dunklin was just resolve it peacefully. There doesn't have to be bloodshed. This is ridiculous. Just do not shoot, basically.
Right.
So that was his thing, no casualties whatsoever. So Ryland tried to get the Mormons to just sell their land and then move to the adjacent Clay County or, in the little town of Liberty or up to Caldwell County, which is Kingston area.
They wanted them to sell the land that they didn't technically own anymore?
Basically, yeah. So
basically they were saying, we will pay you off then. We'll give you money to leave.
Yes, exactly. And the best part about that, too, is the terms that the Missourians were proposing were extremely reasonable. They said, you appoint 6 land speculators and we'll appoint 6 land speculators. Then those 12 people will go and determine the value of all of the land. And then they'll also take into account all the improvements that you guys have made on the land, all the buildings that you've put up and everything. And then we'll pay you off fair market value. And the Mormons were like, no. We're not going to go for it.
Well, they couldn't, right? Because they thought this was the new Zion, right? I mean, this was the new Jerusalem or whatever.
Well, yeah, and that's why this was the Mormons were clinging on so hard, and why this became completely irrational.
Yeah.
Why they didn't want to be, away from Zion. I mean, even Joseph, when he initially went out to Independence, he was standing on the banks of a river there, and he said, or a little body of water or something, and he said, this shore is exactly where Jesus will, come back in the second coming.
And that had already happened, or that's happening soon?
No, I don't know.
Right, because at this point, I'm sorry, I have to go back to the storyline. At this point, had Joe ever been to Missouri?
Yeah, he had been to Missouri a couple times, actually.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
But it was more just for quick visits. He never lived there until at this point, right?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. All right, good.
So that was the idea. The Jackson County Missourians hated the Mormons. The Clay County Missourians, it sounds like they could kind of deal with them. They didn't really like them, but they could deal with them, but not, they didn't hate them as much as Jackson County. And then Caldwell is a county just, north of Clay County. So they're, 1, 2, 3 stacked on top of each other. And apparently Caldwell, it was so rural that, there wasn't really anybody there to bother the Mormons. So they're like, just go up there and settle a town up there and stop bugging all the people in Jackson County that hate you. And the Mormons like, well, this is our Zion.
Oh, so they weren't even necessarily like telling him to leave the state. They were just like, look, up the ways you've got some people and you're not bothering anybody.
Yes.
So they were being quite generous. I'll give them that. Yeah. But again, if that's the problem when you don't understand someone's religious belief, right? I mean, imagine going to the Warren Jeff compound thing? What's that called?
The Colorado City.
FLDS or something?
Yeah, the FLDS, Colorado City.
So go down there and say, listen, I'll give you $1 million. All you have to do is give up polygamy. That's it. Everybody here gets $1 million. It's just like it's like their fundamental core religious belief. You can't buy that off typically, or not easily anyway.
No, not usually easily. But,
yeah, it's like, don't worry, we'll give you fair market value for Zion, right?
Well, and that was also a big problem with it too, because after everything had gone down, one of the primary sticking points wasn't just the land that they had been chased off of and the fact that it was Zion, but it was also like the guns and the goods, right? So when they ran all the Mormons out of their houses, they ransacked them, and of course they looted anything useful, and then chased all the Mormons and burned their houses down. Right? That makes sense. Yeah. And the biggest point was their whiskey and their guns. When it comes to Isn't it? Isn't it always? And it was just general goods, because you had Algernon Sidney Gilbert, who had the store in Independence, and all of his shit got taken, was taken by the mob, and then all of the guns too. And when you consider a gun today, like you can go anywhere and pick up a gun for a couple $100 right now, right? I mean, pretty much anybody that can pass a background check can do that really easily.
Unless you're at a gun show, then you don't need a background check. But anyway,
that's true. Yeah, but we won't get into the politics of that. But like back in the frontier days, when a man bought a gun, that was like his investment, right? He usually kept that gun in the family. He got it from his dad, or passed it down to his son, so on and so forth. So the mob had actually taken 52 guns and 1 horse pistol with them, or from the Mormons. And that was one of the main things that the Mormons were really, really pissed off about. And you saw that come up a couple of times throughout the letters that they were sending back and forth. It was like, we don't agree to your terms, and what about our guns, and what about our spilt whiskey, and what about this? And, they were not happy about being chased out. So, yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah, and they were already pretty financially destitute, right? Their bank had failed. Yeah. They were technically squatting on land that they defaulted on, and now they get all their supplies and guns taken. Like, they're not doing too hot.
No, exactly. And that was actually another sticking point that was in the letters back and forth between Ryland and Joseph. The Mormons weren't happy about having to pay the ferry fees to go, ferry back across the Mississippi River. Because they didn't even have enough money to pay those fees to get away from Missouri to go back to Kirtland or back to, Pennsylvania or wherever they came from.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, that was even one of the sticking points, was just the ferry fees. You think the governor would be like, oh, I'll waive those, I'll take care of them. But, it was messy. Like I said, it was all really messy. So, once June 8th hit, that's when Hiram Smith, Joseph's older brother, and Lyman White joined up. They had been, I think in North Illinois, and they'd picked up some people up there. And that is the point, June 8th. That's when the camp totaled 205 armed men. That's when they hit the critical mass.
So Joe had told all of his, well, at least a bunch of his supporters, right? Like Hiram and this Wayman guy or whatever his name was. Like, hey, just you go that way, get as many guys as you can, and just come catch up to me.
Yep, pretty much.
Gotcha.
And they would do that, and they would join up with a dozen people, or with 3 or 4 people, or with, just some money that people had donated, or just some supplies or whatever. So, yeah.
All right. So now we're 205 strong. This thing's getting... So governor's saying, please stop, and Joe's just getting stronger on the way. This is heating up.
Just building the army. And then on June 9th, the very next day, here's the passage out of the history of the church, quote, while at Salt River, General Lyman White, so Lyman White, who had joined up with Hiram Smith the day before, Joseph elected him to be general of the Zion's camp, while Joseph was still commander-in-chief.
Well, of course. But at least, I mean, before they were all just like elders and deacons. It's like, this is, okay, they're getting there. Now it's starting to sound more like an army.
Now it's like getting real. We got, like Captain Brigham Young, General Lyman White, so on and so forth. But yeah, so General Lyman White here marched to the camp on the prairie, inspected our firelocks, ordered a discharge of the same at targets by platoons, drilled us half a day, and returned to camp. End quote.
Wow. So this is starting to turn into a professional fighting force. I like it.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you were a objective third-party observer, and you want to see what's going to happen between the Missourians and the Mormons, and you hear that the Mormons are like drilling, they're like actually doing like running military drills. It's like, well, this story's starting to heat up. I'm pretty excited now.
Yeah, exactly. And this is back in a day where it took a long time to get from point A to point B. It's like everyone in the world knew that the U.S. was invading Iraq, right? I mean, everyone knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But everyone was still kind of surprised that Bush actually did it. But still, like, everything was building up. The fleet's moving. Troops are flying in. Bases are blowing up in population. It's like, yeah, this is pretty freaking obvious what's about to happen. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this sounds pretty similar.
Yeah, the people at the time, this was actually, this was after the War of 1812. I mean, this was all still in the same people's lifetimes that had experienced the War of 1812. And, the last time that they had seen this, an invading army, it was the Redcoats. They invaded all the way into Washington, D.C. and burned the Capitol. So,
well, not only that, they knew, they saw their own townspeople join the militia, and what would happen? All the men of a town would get together. They would probably do things that looked exactly like this, and then they would go and, meet the larger force and say, we're part of your army now. We're the such and such volunteers, or whatever they would call themselves.
Yep.
Right?
The Minutemen, militias, yes.
Yeah, so this could not have been like something that people didn't recognize. Like, yep, that's an army. That's what that is. Yeah.
Yeah. A bunch of guys marching around, guns over their shoulders with wagons full of supplies. I mean,
and training to fight.
And training. Yeah.
You got me. Yeah. Edge my seat. Let's go.
So then June 16th, another big proposal for a peace proposal was sent off to Joe and to the other Mormons that were living in Missouri, and it was rejected again. So I'm just pointing that out only because it's like the people of Missouri while Joe was marching on to Missouri, while the pressure was building, the people were trying to frantically come to a peaceful solution before shit went down.
Sounds
right?
that way.
So, while the spectators might have wanted to see a big fight go down, there were a lot of people with vested interests that didn't really want to fight. So
the people that were about to get shot at. It's weird how they would have a problem with it. Yeah. Everyone on the outside looking in, it's like, oh man, I hope they fight. Yeah.
It's like a car crash. Like, you just got to watch it, but you don't want to be in it.
There you go.
So on June 17th, Hiram Smith actually recommended a change of plans to Joe, and Joe heeded that advice.
What was it?
So you'd think it was just a direction that they were going to go. If they were going to go across the plain or across a big prairie, or if they were going to go around a prairie into the north side of Missouri, basically.
Do we have any details as to the motivation behind the course correction?
I don't know. It was really, really vague because I was reading it out of the history of the church. So it shows, like, of course, no flaw of Joseph is ever portrayed in this entire book. So it's really hard to understand the impetus behind what happened, because when that happened, Sylvester Smith, our buddy Sylvester Smith, comes up again, and he said, he seemed to like attack this as a weakness, and he said, quote, "Are you following your general or some other man?" End quote.
Whoa.
Yeah, so, insurrection in the ranks.
He is disgruntled as fuck by listen to him.
Not only that,
I can't believe Joe just hasn't like kicked him out of the group and just been like, just get out of here. Just go home. Or just go away. Man.
Then it's like, where the fuck do they go? Because they had made this march. They didn't have the supplies to make their way back. Joseph wasn't going to give them money so they could make the trek back. They weren't going to go live with the Mormons in Missouri because that's where they were marching anyway. So, what else was their other option, right? So it wasn't just Sylvester Smith. 20 other men actually left the march that day.
Whoa. So even though they had nowhere to go?
Yeah. They were just like, we're staying here. You guys go do your fucking thing. We are not going to keep marching with you.
Because Hiram made a suggestion and Joe followed it. And that shattered so many people's faith.
Well, that's how it's portrayed in the history of the church. Now, what really happened, I don't know, because it's really, really vague. I couldn't find any other references to this exact incident. So,
well, regardless of the reason why, right? So maybe Hiram said, hey, it'll be quicker over there. Maybe they saw some sort of trap up ahead. Who cares why? The point is that I don't blame these people for leaving, because Joe has been saying for quite some time, I have all the answers. You only trust me. Don't listen to anybody else. And then suddenly everyone's like, well, you just clearly listened to somebody else. Is he the one? Is he smarter? Wait a minute. Right? Yeah. So that this actually makes sense. I don't even care if we know the reason. Sorry, Joe. You did kind of you let him peek a little bit behind the curtain of the wizard there, and they got. Yeah,
exactly. He showed his belly for just a little bit too long. He showed his weakness, and then this Sylvester was looking for that opening. It seems.
That's true.
But of course, the next day, because they realized they had nowhere to go, they joined back up with them.
Okay. It's like, this is bullshit, man. Let's get out of here. Yeah, man. It's like, wait a minute. We're clearly going to die. All right, fine. I'm going to go back, but we're going to be friends with Sylvester. At least that guy is at least fun to hang out with.
It's like a 9-year-old running away from home, right?
Right, exactly.
He'll be back in 45 minutes when he wants some ice cream or something, right?
Yeah,
yeah. So that was, that was pretty. That was indicative of the dissent that was going on. If this, if there were pressures building up and Sylvester was able to, take 20 men away from the march, even in defiance of, their own self-preservation at the time, obviously there were a lot of dudes that weren't really happy. So I get it. It was kind of the manifestation of the insurrection that was going on.
Yeah, so sounds that way. All right. So, man, I don't know who has the advantage right now. The governor didn't know what to do. Joe's probably sitting there nervous now. I feel like there's just tension on both sides. I love it. Love this story. Let's keep going.
Yes, indeed. I love this stuff too. We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm getting excited.
You can just understand why both sides would at this point be like super tense and freaking out, kind of like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen, but it all sounds bad. I don't see a good answer. Because even Joe, what could Joe say? Abandon Zion and let's get out of here? Of course he could not do that. He didn't have an option to do that.
Yeah, he's committed to do it because, he went through all of the actions leading up to this. He was kind of committed. So you kind of empathize with Joe, like he kind of painted himself into a corner here too.
Yeah. Empathize it means that we know what he was thinking now. Doesn't mean that we're like giving him a pass for what got him to this point.
Empathy is one way to say it, yes, but it's not like we're sad about it. It's not like I pity him for it. It's like, no, you fucked up, bro. Yeah. And now you got to dig yourself out.
And you can completely empathize with the governor because, just like how much did the ATF get crapped on after Waco, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, you don't want to be the one that has to go kill a bunch of just people, you don't want to be the one that kills Americans. I'll just put it that way, and right?
Nice qualifier.
I'm sorry, I had to remember that where we are. Actually, I was going to say at what time period, but actually it's probably still relevant now.
6 minutes ago, we talked about the Iraq War.
But yeah, you just don't want to be the governor where, 200 Americans got slaughtered by your forces in your state. It's just like that. That's not good PR. I don't even care why. It's just not good PR.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was, obviously it was a motivation behind the entire, the trying to settle it without any conflict. And the guys that were the primary Mormons that were handling the compromise that was going on, we had William Wines Phelps, Double Dub Phelps, Algernon Sidney Gilbert, Asa Gilbert. He was the store owner in Missouri.
So these guys, you're saying these are the ones that were negotiating with the governor's people?
Yeah, these were the Mormons living in Missouri that had been chased out, that were living in Clay County or Caldwell County temporarily. And they were working on the compromise. And then, of course, Edward Partridge, we know him, Party Boy Partridge. He was kind of the rich guy that was a good friend of Sidney Rigdon. He was also one of the guys that was working on these compromises as well.
But it sounds like no one's working on anything. They just keep getting rejected.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so the Mormons, anytime an agreement would come up, the Mormons would just reject it, like every time.
So these poor guys, they're probably just sitting there going, oh, for God's sake, that was a good deal. What are you doing? We worked so hard on that. Stop saying no.
These guys were trying to these guys were motivated to get back into Zion, though. So they wanted to establish back into Zion, but of course the Missourians were trying to say, all the Mormons have to be out of here by this time. No Mormons can move into Jackson County. Mormons can't get loans here. Mormons can't do business here. So like all the people in Missouri just hated the Mormons for being Mormons, basically.
This is exactly the Israel-Palestine story.
Oh my God.
Is it not? Right?
Yeah.
These people moved in and said, no, this is our holy land. And the people that lived there were like, wait, what? No, it's not. What's going on here?
Wait, we've been here for thousands of years. What do you mean? Yeah, dude.
It's the same story.
Yep. Same exact thing. So, yeah, that's it was laying claim to the Holy Land. In biblical times, too. You can go back to multiple times throughout the Bible. The entire campaign of Moses and the Israelites. All of that was just about, oh, this is our Holy Land, let's go kill them. Oh, now this is our Holy Land, let's kill them too. It's like, Jesus.
The Crusades, same thing.
Same thing, yep. So on June 19th, a band of mobbers came into the camp swearing that the Mormons would, quote, see hell before morning, end quote.
18?
No. It just said a band of robbers. This happened on June 19th.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were saying that's how many robbers there were. I was like, well, they have
No. It was in the video. It's portrayed as like 4 guys riding up on a horse, but yeah, they said that they had 130 other guys that were joining up with that night, that they were going to join up, and they were going to ambush them that night. So they came in, all the Mormons got up their guns and got ready to shoot back at these guys and got in defensive position. And then they came up, where's Joe Smith? Where's Joe? We know you Mormons, and you all are Mormons, and you're damn going to hell and all that. So, yeah, and then, of course, Joe went into defensive position for that same night again. But,
so wait. Nothing. That didn't escalate?
It's pretty fucking crazy.
Okay.
That night, a rainstorm came in, like a huge rain and hailstorm. And it said that the nearby river rose to 40 feet that night, whereas before it was just up to their feet. And nobody could cross the river in this area that they were camping in to make the assault. So apparently the rain and the hail was just so bad that nobody could be outside. It tore down all the tents, and all of the Mormons had to take shelter in this old Baptist chapel that was nearby where they were camping, and it was just too rainy for anybody to do anything.
Huh.
And if you read, it's included in here. Parley P. Pratt recounts it, and he's like, and in the hand of the Lord, it was a clear sky that day, and then Joseph said that the hand of the Lord will protect us, and then a dark cloud came over the sky, and it was obviously the hand of the Lord, because not a single man could do anything out in the rain, and it was, it's seen as this amazing miracle thing, like God was protecting them.
It is funny how when weather does a thing, people find a way to say, see, God did it. It's just amazing. I mean, so the same person could have been, look, it was sunny on my wedding day. There you go. Because I prayed for it. It's like, yeah, but somebody else just got killed because it didn't rain. So.
Yep, pretty much. Yep. That's what happens when the earth is a closed system. There's a limited amount of water. But one thing that is interesting that's worth pointing out, one of the guys here, it said the guy's name. I can't remember what his name was, but he was actually in this small group of dudes that ran up to the camp and was like, we're going to kill Joe Smith. And then he swore that by that night, or by that next day, that he will either shed Joseph's blood, or the buzzards and birds will eat his corpse. And then apparently this guy, during the night, when they were trying to cross the river, he fell into the water and drowned. Whoa. And was found a few days later, a few miles down the river. And he was getting eaten by buzzards and birds. So it's like, oh, amazing. God works in such mysterious ways.
No. Yeah, okay, sorry, I missed that connection. I was thinking to myself, like, man, he really wanted to kill Joe.
Yeah,
Well, I didn't even realize that they would attribute that to like God doing something good. I keep forgetting that their version of God is a malicious murderer. But anyway, yeah. I get it.
At least he's a malicious murderer for them.
Oh, yeah. Just wait. You sniff in some iniquities, it can change real fast. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've read the Book of Mormon. I know how this story goes.
It's the slippery slope, man.
Very much.
Don't start backsliding.
All right, so they got some God blessings. They're like, all right, but the tension's not over. They just survived the night. So I don't know why they're getting that excited.
Well, because they were moving out the next day, so they were no longer camped in there, and they didn't have to. Actually, no, sorry, they stayed there. That was where they were stayed camped. So they were a little worried still at this point. Okay. On June 20th,
now hold on. How far are they from Jackson County? They've been in Missouri a while, it seems like.
Yeah, they're. Let's see. I'm not sure where Fishing River is. Because we're coming up to the Fishing River Revelation, which is like a big revelation that comes up here. And I don't know where that is.
All right, so they're over the border, but they're not exactly like almost there. I guess we don't have to know specifically where.
I think they're pretty close here. Given what happens next, I think they're probably within maybe 30 miles, 2 or 3 days away from Jackson County.
Gotcha. All right.
So
all right.
they're getting pretty close.
Yeah, you gave me the teaser with the river. These river fights.
On June 20th, it's recorded that 3 men in the camp had cholera.
Oof.
Yeah, right. Cholera.
Although I'm shocked it took this long, considering what they've been drinking.
Yeah, water with like little red wigglers in it, and yeah.
Did not sound pleasant.
And eating too, like the nasty stuff that they were eating. One day there was like they mixed honey with breakfast mush or something. They called it. It's like what the? Ooh.
And they're not bathing.
No.
All right, I actually don't want to think about their physical
we
state
get the
right
idea,
now.
though.
Cholera is bad enough. All right, they got cholera.
So on June 22nd, that's what it's all led up to.
Whenever you start this, I get so nervous. Okay, I'm
Joseph
settled.
on June 22nd, Joseph gave his fishing river revelation.
Okay,
saying, quote, "Therefore, in consequence of the transgressions of my people, it is expedient in me that mine elders should wait for a little season for the redemption of Zion." End quote.
So he finally had enough, huh?
He's just quit.
He's like, you know what? I'm not saying that Zion ain't a real thing, but God is clearly telling us now is not the time.
Yep. This is his fishing river revelation, and it is forever known as like the big give up that Joseph had. Yeah. All of these guys had marched all of this time ready to go to Missouri and fight, and then as soon as they have a real existential threat of this mob is going to take over them, Joe's like, yeah, we're done. We're done. Sorry, guys. We're fucking off.
I mean, but they had just gone on and on about how God had delivered them. Like, nothing can hurt us because, look, he sent in the rains. And so Joe obviously knew. Was like, no, we just got really lucky with the rain.
Fucking lucky.
Let's not. Remember before? You don't tempt God with the snake. Remember? Yeah. God's clearly telling us we're outnumbered and we're just idiots if we move forward. Not going to keep protecting us, guys. If we're not getting the message. So
we got lucky once or twice.
We did.
Let's not test it. Not push God's luck here. So
there you go. So what did Sylvester say? I'd love to hear what he had to say about it.
We'll get to that in a little while here.
All right.
Because we're not done. We're still a little ways from done. But this was just him giving up.
So did everyone know? I mean, did they let the negotiators know that they were done? I mean, or was this just Joe telling his people? But did the rest of Missouri know that okay, you can stand down?
Joseph just gave the fishing river revelation. He just gave that to his camp. That they were the only people that knew it at this time, right? He didn't do it when people were around at the time. Okay. But what I have to point this out. This is a side note from what happens. But Lyman Smith accidentally shot himself in the leg with a horse pistol. So
that's relevant. Or you just had to say it?
He's the only guy that gets shot for the whole fucking thing.
Oh, wow.
Shot himself.
What are you going to do?
You have 200 men armed, marching for months, going, an armed militia going to meet another major armed militia. The only casualty is a dude shot himself in the leg with a pistol.
I do have to say, though, that is evidence of a pretty well-trained army. So they were doing something right, because I would have expected that there might have been quite a bit more shooting, especially hearing all the whiskey that was going on. I'm impressed. I'm just impressed that there was only one self-inflicted wound.
The whole time. Yeah, no kidding. Well, there was also the snake wound, so that was self-inflicted as well, so that was the second one.
Yeah, true. True.
So after this revelation was given, Sheriff Cornelius Gilliam came into the camp and he asked for Joseph by name. Of course, he wasn't fucking around. He's like, Sheriff of Missouri, looking for Joe Smith. I know he's here. And then the passage goes on to say, this was the first time that I arose and replied, I am the man. This was the first time that I had ever been discovered or made known to my enemies since I left Kurland. Wow. Gilliam then gave us instructions concerning the manners, customs, and dispositions of the people, and what course we ought to pursue to secure their favor and protection. End quote.
So basically, these are the terms of surrender.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
That's pretty much it.
Making sure I interpreted that right.
Yeah.
All right.
But it wasn't over because Joe just said, hey, he came to terms with this Cornelius Gilliam guy. Of course, Gilliam went back to his people and said, hey, we don't have to worry about the Mormons anymore. But that news didn't spread to everybody, right? Everybody was still on edge, excited that there was going to be a shootout,
Yeah.
So the next day...
we can't move on without at least commenting on how awesome a name Cornelius Gilliam... What is it again?
Sheriff Cornelius Gilliam.
That is awesome. That is a fantastic name.
It's like Gilliam weed. I could breathe underwater if I eat him or something.
It's a great name. Right? It's no Dr. Phalastus Hurlbutt, but it's a pretty good name.
No. So the next day, Zion's camp continues to head towards Liberty. So they were like, all right, we're not going to go in armed and ready to fight. We're just going to go in and, try and negotiate peace terms, but we need a place to stay. It sucks staying out in the field and we have cholera, so not good.
Now, Liberty, is that a community that has Mormons in it?
Liberty is the county or the town where Mormons had settled just in the county north of Jackson County.
That was the one the other Missourians were saying, go live up there.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So that's a pretty safe place to be then. You're not really going to bother anybody up there.
Relatively speaking, yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Exactly. So they continue marching. They continue heading towards Liberty, and they're warned by a couple of people to not continue doing it. One of the main people was General Atchison, which was a guy, one of the people that was handling the affairs, one of the officials that was handling the affairs in Missouri.
Was he like a retired general, or was he like actual general of like the National Guard or something?
It just said General Atchison. I don't know if he was an actual active general or if he was just, a retired guy living there that was still had his finger in, city affairs at the time. I'm not really sure what his office was. It just said General Atchison. So,
and for the record, again, I'm going to throw something out to perhaps your foreign listeners. Not American, that's wrong. Just not American listeners.
You un-American listeners.
The term national, every U.S. state has their own military, and that's called their National Guard, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a U.S. military, like the federal military, which is what you probably are more familiar with. But every time we say National Guard, that's what we're referring to. So a governor is kind of the commander of that smaller army.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Didn't you serve with the National Guard? Is that right?
Yeah, I was both active duty and in a state National Guard. Yeah,
very, very cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, just for clarification, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So, you're welcome for your freedom, Bryce. Just saying.
Well, thank you for your service. If it's not too token citizen of me to say,
it really was. But I did egg it on.
Right? It's tainted now. It's tainted. It feels like you asked for it. Off we go. So instead of going to Liberty, they decided to go to Algernon Sidney Gilbert's house, which, we know him as Asa Gilbert, right? Mm-hmm. He was living in Clay County still, but not in the town of Liberty. He was just living on the outskirts on a farm. So
we got no reason that this general said, don't go there. Like, what was prohibitive about going there?
Well, because it wasn't the town of Liberty. Because if the Mormons marched into Liberty itself, the militia would take that as an aggressive act. So they're just like,
so what they're basically saying is, we don't care how small the town is; it's still a town. You can go stay at your buddy's farm. That's fine. You don't come to a town with an army. I get it. That makes sense now.
And I think it was also, I think the people were aware of the next problem that they ran into because cholera finally outbroke. It wasn't just, 3 guys that had it anymore. There was a full-on outbreak.
Well, didn't Joseph prophesy this would happen?
He did say that, you'll die like the sheep with the rot. Yeah. So maybe the rot is cholera here. Because it ended up out of the entire 200 plus people that were there, 68 men came down with it, and 14 people died. That's
a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad outbreak.
And also, I'm fairly certain if you have cholera, you are out of commission. Like, this is not a walk it off disease. This is you're just
you're bedridden and shitting all the time.
Awful.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yep. And terrible pain too. Apparently, high fever and lots of pain. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. Of those 14 people, one of them was Joe's cousin, Jesse J. Smith. And another one was Acid Gilbert, the guy whose farm they were living at, or staying at. He took him in. He was one of the primary guys that was working on negotiations between Missouri and the Mormons. And that's what he got for it. He caught it and died.
I always get sad when a character who's been with us for many episodes goes. I don't care if he was a good guy or bad guy. So let's just say goodbye to old Acid.
Yep, old Acid Gilbert. Him and Father Whitney were good buddies, business partners, and big fans of Joe. And well, they both suffered the wrath of it. Algernon Sidney Gilbert to a greater extent, of course.
Yeah, and what a terrible way to go. It wasn't in some gun battle, blaze of glory. Nope, you just got the plague.
We're going to dive even deeper into this. I hope you're ready to not kill yourself with what we're about to read, because I'm going to read an extract from the Journal of Heber C. Kimball again here.
Okay. Love the way you warned me about this. Go on.
Quote, when the cholera first broke out in the camp, Brother John S. Carter was the first who went forth to rebuke it. But he himself was immediately seized by it, and as before stated, was the first who was slain.
Oof.
So this keeps on going, but
that was a backfire. I rebuke you, cholera. Oh yeah, said cholera. Well, then I will kill you.
You are dead. And it's worth pointing out, just taking an aside from the passage here, this is the mindset that we're dealing with here. This is the mindset of these guys. They were dealing with this cholera outbreak. Germ theory wasn't really a thing here. I mean, what else would they think it was other than like the curse of God or something, or, rot like the sheep, like Joseph had prophesied, right?
Sure.
So, it's just, it really sucks. It goes on.
It was just super bad luck that the first guy that went out to rebuke it ended up being the first guy to die of it.
Yeah.
This camp has either exceptionally good luck or exceptionally bad luck. Like, they just can't seem to find a middle ground.
No. It was, wildly. It was like the craziest roller coaster, only with death all the time. I mean, it's the worst. It goes on here. In about 30 minutes after his death, Seth Hitchcock followed him, and it appeared as though we must sink under the destroyer with them.
Wow. So they're just expecting people to start dropping like flies.
Oh, just wait. This gets so much worse. We were not able to obtain boards to make coffins, but were under the necessity of rolling them up in their blankets and burying them in that manner.
Well, okay. I mean, I don't feel too bad for that. They're dead. They don't care.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still like, and you picture the shape that the guys were in that were, helping them out too. They were probably scared to disobey the Lord or to catch it or whatever. Yeah. And, they probably weren't in the best of shape anyway. They probably didn't have a whole lot of energy, and they were having to bury these guys anyway. You kind of empathize with how shitty the whole situation was altogether, all things considered.
And let's be honest, they could have taken the easy route and just burned them, right? I mean, that's the quickest, easiest way out of the problem. So they still kind of had some of their, I guess you'd say, what made them, right? Their beliefs and their faith that, nope, you gotta bury him. And they were actually distraught that they couldn't make coffins and they had to use blankets. So, I mean, I'll give them that. They're still kind of holding on to what they consider dignity. But
and it's the thing is it's not just like, it's not a family member, it's not a neighbor, it's a brother in arm too.
Oh.
That's another big point that Joe hit on a couple times, is like, there's no greater love than a man that'll lay down his life for another man or for his fellow brother, and he was really instilling this fraternal instinct with everybody. So that really adds to it as well.
That is true. That actually helps make a lot more sense, because you're going to give your fallen comrade all the respect that you, okay, I'm with you. Yeah. Okay, now I empathize. Thank you, Bryce, for making me feel small. but now I get it.
I'm happy to do it anytime. So let's see. It goes on to say, our hopes were that no more would die, but while we were uniting in a covenant to pray once more with uplifted hands to God, we looked at our beloved brother, Elder Wilcox, and he was gasping his last.
Jesus.
It like flies, dude, and it gets worse. At this scene, my feelings were beyond expression. Those only who witnessed it can realize anything of the nature of our sufferings.
That has got to be so frightening. Like you're
God.
You're looking around and there's just the people, like you said, the people that the strongest bond that you've had with anyone, they're just dying around you. And it's not like there's an enemy you can go fight. You just have to sit there and take it. There's nothing you can do. That has to be horrible.
And that's the thing is like, and 14 people died, but 68 came down with it.
Yeah.
That's like, who's next? Who's next? Like all of these guys are laying down in beds, you know, they are looking like death. Who is going to be the next one that actually kicks a bucket?
Yeah. And this is like a third to like a half of them, right? I mean, this is a big chunk of this group.
Mm-hmm. It goes on, and I felt to weep and pray to the Lord that he would spare my life, that I might behold my dear family again.
Yeah, everyone gets selfish at the end, don't they?
Yep, a little bit, yep.
Screw these guys, just keep me alive, God.
Please, just me alone, yes. Yep. We felt to sit and weep over our brethren, and so great was our sorrow that we could have washed them with our tears. To realize that they had traveled 1,000 miles through so much fatigue to lay down their lives for our brethren.
Wow.
And it captures what the whole idea of the whole march was. It's like they made this entire march, a military march, basically in vain. Yeah. You know, they were planning on laying down their life for their fellow Mormons, and it ended up just being this invisible destroyer that took them.
Well, not only that, did anyone make the correlation that, wait a minute, Joe gave up and now God's killing us all?
You would think that at least Sylvester would say something about that, right? There was nothing in there about Sylvester saying anything about that, but we'll get into things a little bit later. But you know, you wonder if some people did think that. It'd be hard not to, right?
Oh my God, 20 of them left because he took advice from someone. And here he was and actually just abandoned the entire mission and say, maybe later. And then next thing you know, people start dying.
People, yeah, exactly. But it's the mindset that they were in too. It's like, and Joseph could have turned it around. Like he probably turned it around and said that this is because of our iniquity and our times traveling. And he was probably able to spin it like the guys that are standing up against him are the ones that are making God punish us, basically. The guys that aren't following us are the problem. It's not me that's the problem.
I'm surprised he didn't stand up and say it's all Sylvester's fault, right? That's what he's done every time up until now.
So, and he goes on to say, while one or two were digging the grave, the rest stood with their arms to defend them. This was our situation, the enemies around us and the destroyer in our midst.
Oh my God. So they still had people outside with guns?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's the thing is there were still, you know, mob, militia that didn't like them being so close to liberty. So there, you know, people were still on edge. And, you know, at any moment, there could have been an ambush by an enemy mob, even while they're burying their fellow brethren that died of cholera. Like,
wow.
Shit. Yeah, it was not okay. Like, it was a bad news bears around there.
If there's one thing I've learned from studying American history at any length at all, we used to love mobs. Actually, we've always loved mobs. Like, mobs can form so fast in this country.
It's a good thing that we have TV, because I'm convinced if we didn't have something to, you know, internet and TV to constantly satisfy us and keep us like staring at our navel, that there would always be mobs. Like that was just their form of entertainment back then. It's like, who doesn't look like us? Black people? Oh, let's lynch them. That'll be a fun community activity. You know, let's have an ethnic cleansing.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard for us to even understand the concept of like a police station getting overrun by the citizens of the town so that they could go murder someone inside and everything would be okay the next day. Like, it's so hard for us to even say, what are you talking about? the townspeople were like shooting at their own cops because they wanted to kill someone so bad. What? It's crazy sounding, but it used to happen all the time.
Yeah, all
mob
the time.
after mob after mob. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Soon after we returned, another brother was taken from our little band. Brother Joseph, seeing the sufferings of his brethren, stepped forward to rebuke the destroyer, but was immediately seized with the disease himself.
Man, this is I think God is pissed. I don't even believe in God. If I were in that camp, I'd be like, we are doing something really wrong. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, somebody fucked up. Like, mistakes were made somewhere along the line. Let's backtrack a little bit, see what exactly happened.
Let me make sure I just heard what happened. Joseph Smith has just contracted cholera?
Yeah, dude. Along with 67 other guys.
Good God. I know I give this guy a lot of crap, but he has been through some shit in his life.
Dude, yeah, no kidding. And
All
and
right.
you, oh my God, like hearing, I left out so much of this, like you don't even know how much I left out, but there's so many times when they're like hiking through rain and it's springtime on the plains, dude. It's like always just shitty rain and mud everywhere. There were all the times where the guys had to like throw chains over their shoulders and like help drag the wagons through the mud because the horses couldn't do it. And it's like, fuck, man. Everything that they went through, it would have sucked so bad.
And then you finally get there. You can see the destination, and it's like, nah, we can't go in there. But we can't really leave either because we're kind of don't have anything. And oh, shit, we're all dying now.
Yeah.
Great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't it great?
Not a great camp to be in. Not the summer camp that most of them signed up for, I don't think.
One thing that I was a little bit surprised with, I didn't know this until I found this out, but one of the people that died was named Betsy Parrish.
Okay.
And I'm like, Betsy, that's not a guy's name. So I actually looked it up. Apparently, you know, it's all talked about what the men were doing and everything, but there were actually 9 or possibly 10 women that were involved with Zion's camp.
Huh.
And there were even 7 children, like under the age of 10 children involved too.
Yeah.
So
part 1 of this recording, I asked that question and you said it was just guys. It's just because you learned later?
That's what I was so surprised about when I found that out. I'm like, I saw that Betsy Parrish had died. I'm like, Betsy, what the hell? And that's when I looked up the names list, and it was like they had a list of 9 names and then a question mark next to a 10th name on the women. And I was like, what the really? I had no idea. And I only assumed that it was men because that's all it had talked about.
Well, yeah.
It didn't say what the women were doing. It didn't say that they were helping to prepare food or like sew clothing, or it doesn't say anything what they were doing. It leaves them completely absent, kind of like the Book of Mormon. So
yeah, I was gonna say they're just staying true to the canon. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. It makes perfect sense now.
Does.
So
you were surprised they weren't mentioning the women? Okay.
I shouldn't be. Yeah, you're right. I'm.
But it does imply that some of these guys were like, I'll come with you, but I'm bringing my wife and kids. Like, I'm not coming alone. It wasn't many of them, but there was at least a few that were just like, I ain't going out there without something to hit. So there you go.
I'm gonna be gone for how long?
Yeah.
Oh, really, dude?
Yeah.
At least you're not staying in Kirtland, because who knows what would happen to my wife if you were there alone with her.
Oh, touche.
Yeah. At least they didn't have to worry about that much right now. They were just rumors going on. Right. So I do have to point this out. You're just speaking in line with that. Heber C. Kimball, where we read, quite a few of these secondary firsthand accounts out of his journal. He's actually the father of Helen Mar Kimball, who was the youngest of Joe's wives. She was 14 when they were married. Pleasant. And I have to point this out. I came across it a long time ago, and I think I mentioned it when it happened in the timeline, but she was actually born when Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery were putting the Book of Mormon together.
That's just disgusting.
So,
because how old was he when he married her?
That was in 1842, so he was 37. I mean,
not that there's like there's not an answer you could have given that makes it okay to marry a 14-year-old girl, Right. So I'm
but
as soon as I asked
the larger
question,
the disparity, the more creepy.
Yeah,
that's he was
horrifying.
37, I think.
And this girl's dad clearly consented to the idea. Like he was.
Yeah, well, him and his wife were actually conflicted about it for a while, and Helen was violently opposed. Like, you read her journal of it, and she's like, I would rather that my soul would sink to the depths of hell before I marry Joseph. And, like, she dreaded getting married to him. But Joseph promised amazing blessings on the entire Kimball family if she did get married to him, and then... What do you know? Spencer W. Kimball was one of the presidents of the church, one of the prophets, and he was a descendant of Heber Kimball. So, yeah, maybe they were blessed.
Well, Bryce, and thank you, by the way, because there was a minute there where I was feeling sorry for Joe after he got cholera. It's gone. It's all gone.
Gone.
I feel perfectly content now. Yeah, you got cholera, you asshole. That's what you get.
Yep. Just deal with it. Yep. So let's talk about that for a second, because all in all, like everything that they went through, in the video, it's portrayed when Joseph gave this revelation that they were giving up, that they were not going to do it. Sylvester in the video was like, he gave the Mormon equivalent of like, this is bullshit, threw it down his controller and left, right? He's like, he was not happy about everything that happened, because he had, they'd gone through all these struggles and, all of this just to give up.
Right.
But of course, just in much the way that Joe did, he was able to take lemons and make some amazing world-class bullshit lemonade.
Okay, I'm excited to hear how.
He considered the whole thing was a sacrifice. Like, it was a sacrifice, it was a test, and it was also like a culling of the weak almost.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is when the church presidency was officially organized in 1835, a year after this, 9 of the 12 original apostles were part of Zion's camp. Every single one of the 7 presidents of the first quorum of the 70 were part of the camp, and every single member of the quorum of the 70 all were involved in this Zion's camp.
So it was almost like you earned your place there.
Exactly.
It also kind of sounds like very like Mother Teresa's suffering is good doctrine, right? Like you got to suffer for God to be worthy or something like that.
Yeah, because like God knows that you can handle the suffering, and He's blessing you with it basically. So the afterlife will seem all the sweeter or whatever. So the lack of suffering is all the sweeter.
That old apologetic, God doesn't give us things we can't handle. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that great? Yeah. Then why do people kill themselves? But anyway, yeah. So that considering all of what happened here, it's like what was the point, right?
Yeah. And actually, is that the end of the story? Like we left off and Joe got cholera. Like, is there more to the story?
Joe got cholera. And okay, so I want to speculate on that in a minute here, but Joe got cholera. They ended up on July 8th after losing 14 people to cholera, never firing a single shot at an enemy. The only gunshots that were fired were in target practice and at their own legs. And they nearly starved and thirsted to death multiple times. Yeah. I mean, there's rife throughout this. It was like they had no water, or the water they had was like it was fetid, or it had creatures living in it. So they would always they were always needing water. They were always needing food and eating the worst shit food. And they actually, considering everything, what they were planning on doing was going to give supplies to the Missourians, right?
But Bryce, you did forget the worst part of the suffering, though. There was that dog that barked at him. Let's not forget about that traumatic event.
Not forget about the dog. That's right. And thank you to Sylvester Smith that he had to deal with that just so we could read about it now. We really understand what the suffering was like.
That was the weirdest part of the story. It was like, why is that a thing?
Right?
Like you said, all the stuff you're describing, it's horrible. And it's like, but this dog barked at me, that little bastard. I'm going to kill a dog. All right,
but
sorry.
but that plays into this so much. Is like Joe just turned it into a learning experience. After all of it was said and done, they didn't do any good for anybody. They created a whole bunch of like fervor, and people didn't know what was going to happen. It was in the headlines everywhere. It was all of this build up, all for a huge non-climax, and then he just took it and turned it into a teaching story. Like a teaching event.
This just happened. This is the Birdwatcher Mormons. Or what was the name? Bundy? Was that their names?
Oh yeah. The Bundy guys.
Yeah, the ones that just took the bird sanctuary in Oregon and they held it for a week or something. And then eventually it was like this big showdown with the government. And then they were just like, "Yeah, this is a bad idea. We're done. We're going to stop
exactly."
now." And then America stopped paying attention. It was like, oh, nothing happened. Oh no, it's like the kids that go to the flagpole because there's going to be a fight. And then one kid doesn't show up, and everyone's just like, "Oh, I guess we'll just go home then." You know what I mean?
But the parallel goes so much deeper, because those guys, when they were upholding that, that sanctuary down, they sent out messages on like Twitter and Facebook and like, "We need supplies, bring this and chips and like coffee creamer and stuff," because they weren't prepared for what they were doing.
Did you hear what people sent
prepared.
Them? Did you hear what people sent them?
Dicks, right?
Yeah, people were like, "Oh, you need supplies," and then like there was this campaign to just send hundreds of dildos to them. It was fantastic. It's like, this is how dumb we think you are. Just for the record.
Yep. This is the best way that we could tell you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah, and maybe they just didn't have dildos in the 1830s, and so the only thing they could do is just form a mob. Just get a mob. We gotta go. This is the equivalent of us sending them dildos. Let's go out there and fire some shots around them, freak them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my!
But dude, it's so perfect though. It's like it's an exact analog.
And they're still Mormons.
Exactly
they were just following the prophet, Bryce. Following the prophet.
Yes.
They're like, "Oh wait, Joe taught us when to quit, and it's right about now."
Yep. He knows the way.
He knows the way.
I love it so much. I love just how anticlimactic it was, because you just don't really like. I can't express how epic it must have been to be there and be like ready to die for somebody, and then have like the rug pulled out from under you. Like, wait, we're just gonna fucking give up and go home. And that's like Sylvester, and like, he really embodied this whole thing. And once they got back, so on July 8th, that's when everybody disbanded.
So when you say back, they made it all the way back to Ohio, to Kirtland?
Yeah. Okay. So what happened is, once it disbanded, once it disbanded, a bunch of the Zions camp didn't have the supplies to make it back to Ohio, so a bunch of them just stayed in Caldwell and Clay County. And of course, they got there, they didn't have money, they didn't have supplies, and the Mormons that were there had all of their shit stolen or burned already, so they just made the problem worse. They brought in a whole bunch more Mormons, which is exactly what the Missourians didn't want. And then after all was said and done, Joe was like, "All right, you guys, we don't have enough money to get you back. You stay here. I'm just going to head back with my little posse of leaders." And
what did they do? Draw straws? How did he decide? He was just like,
I have no idea. It didn't really talk about it much. It was just like these guys stayed, and then, like 10 guys, Joseph and these other 10 guys made their way back to Kirtland.
Wait a minute, only 10 from this entire group?
That's all that it listed. It was just like his chiefs in command. You had like Parley P. Pratt and Brigham Young, and like,
but
that's who it listed.
Sylvester was among the 10.
Sylvester was among the 10, and what ended up happening was when they returned,
Joe hated him. What's going on?
When they returned, Sylvester Smith accused Joseph of criminal actions.
Whoa.
The details of it I couldn't find anywhere. I searched forever trying to find what the charges were, or what he was trying to bring them up to, what these criminal actions were. But
it was probably assault by a deadly dog from what we've heard so far.
He almost got a finger bit, sort of. Who
Aggressive
knows, right?
growling. That was the charge.
Punishable by a bite.
Indeed.
It's amazing.
Can we at least hear the rest of the story of Sylvester? What happens to him?
So in reaction to this, a disciplinary council was held for Sylvester.
Well, he had to have seen that coming.
Well, of course. Well, when you raise up criminal actions against the prophet, I mean, they're not just going to... We learned from Mr. Hurlbutt that Joe doesn't just like lay down and take that. He reacts.
Yeah.
And then he was persuaded in this disciplinary council to publish a confession admitting fault on his part.
Wait, what?
It gets better. It gets better. Because...
Are you being sarcastic?
I'm dead serious. This is exactly what happened. And then, just like Dr. Philastus Hurlbutt, just like he did, 3 weeks after he published this confession, he published a statement in the newspaper and that rescinded his confession.
Whoa.
But then it gets better after that, because 3 days after he published that saying that he rescinds his confession, there was another disciplinary council called.
And first of all, every time you're saying he, you mean Sylvester, right?
Sylvester, yeah.
Okay. Just making sure that you weren't saying that Joe was the one confessing. I was like, what?
No. Oh, God, no. Are you kidding me?
Just checking.
Joe can confess of a wrongdoing? No, he's the prophet. He's perfect. So then 3 days after this second council was called and a second confession was drawn up, and he signed that out of fear of punishment.
Well, I assumed he was intimidated in some way the first time.
Somehow, I don't know.
And then I guess he thought it was an empty threat, changed his mind, and they came back and, I don't know, they must have put the real good fear of God in him.
Well, and who knows, too, because there was no actual legal action taken. It was just ecclesiastical action. So who knows? Like in the case with Hurlbutt, there's evidence to conclude that maybe him and Joe got in a little scrap. Like him and Joe fought, and that's why they put out... or they got each other, or they tried to get each other arrested, right? That's why they filed complaints.
Bryce, that was only a few episodes ago. I remember.
So who knows? Maybe something happened between Joe and Sylvester here, and Joe was able to persuade Sylvester to sign the second statement. Who knows? Huh. That's what's so crazy about it.
So he didn't get excommunicated?
No, he stayed in the church. After he signed the second confession, he stayed in the church for another couple of years.
You know what's really sad, Bryce? That means he really did have something good on Joe. That's what that means.
He must have.
He had something good. Yeah. Otherwise, Joe just would have kicked him out and said, "See ya. I'm done with you. Do what you need to do." And no. And then he just would have beat him like he did Hurlbutt, right? Where it's just like, I'll just legally beat you. This isn't hard to do.
Probably.
Right.
But you wonder what you wonder what dirt he had. Like, what could it have possibly been that would have brought up like actual criminal charges that Joe could have been, prosecuted for?
I'm just going to think about what I know about Joe from your show, right? Okay. From what I've read a lot of his writing too. So I think that, so he went without a woman, right? He was womanless for this journey.
Joe was, yeah.
But we have evidence that there were 10 presumably married women in the group.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and make that connection.
That didn't even hit me, but...
That's a pretty obvious choice as a contender for what criminal charges he might have been pursuing, because in that day and age that was illegal, I believe, right? Like adultery was actually in some places a crime.
Yeah, I don't know if it was here or not, but yes, very much so. That hadn't even occurred to me. That hadn't even crossed my mind. But why not?
That might have been why. That's why Joe might have told some of these guys, "Oh, the Lord is telling me that you need to come with your wife because she's pretty bad." And apparently most of them did not have hot wives. And he's like, no, just you. God says just you.
I need to go take your wife and give her a revelation over here in this bush. I mean, yes, why not? Why not? I mean, that it makes sense. It's perfectly consistent with what Joe would do. He'd been in trouble with it before. He's going to get in way more trouble with it after this. Why the fuck not? Sure.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's a theory that at least, it connects all the dots. It even explains the women, because you were confused why they were there. Now we know.
Yep. To cook the food and to,
and I know. And listen to all listeners. Yes, this is speculation, but just saying, it's not groundless speculation.
No. And that's considering Joseph's personality and what he often did. Yeah. I mean, it's perfectly in line. It'd be perfectly expected. Why not?
Sure.
So, I mean, let's kind of like recap considering like everything that was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, he took this troop out. They went through tons of shit. They didn't have any of the proper preparations or the proper supplies for what they were embarking on. Joseph had no idea what he was doing. Like, he was so clearly winging this. He had no idea.
Well, at least he knew to appoint that dude general, because he seems like he at least knew how to train troops. So he had that going for him.
Yeah, Lyman White. Yep.
Yeah, that was
Definitely.
about the only... Wait, it wasn't that the same guy that shot himself?
No, that was Lyman Smith. Close,
okay. Okay. I was going to say, all right, never mind. Maybe not so good a general.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, for the most part, you're right. They clearly did not do their research on what does it take to do a journey of that distance in that day and age.
Oh, yeah. And beyond that, it's like they just made everything way, way worse. I said that a couple times, but it's like everything would have been so much better if this hadn't have happened. Right. Mm-hmm. And like they had to return. Imagine when they got back to Kirtland, right? He gets back, him and just a small contingency remaining of the army get back to Kirtland. Everybody's like, where the fuck is everybody else? What happened? What?
Yeah, I'm actually amazed to hear your next episode where I assume we get to hear how in the world he still stayed in charge after this, because this sounds like you're talking about it. Egg on your face. Goodness.
Oh yeah, no kidding. And like, they're like, what happened, right? What possibly could have happened if you just see only a small portion of the people walking into town? Oh, did a whole bunch of them die from, a big battle that happened? No, they died because they couldn't control how much they were shitting because of cholera. That's it. That's the worst part of it. Like, these people died for no reason and arguably made everything worse in consequence of it. It was
and the other people that aren't here, that God that I said would always provide for us as long as we had faith. Yeah, we couldn't afford to bring them back, so we just kind of had to ditch them.
Leave them with the other homeless Mormons that are living in Missouri right now. Oh, can you guys give me some money?
Okay, I am really looking forward to finding out how he gets around all this, because this seems pretty damning to be the one true voice of God, and it doesn't look good for him.
I think it will amaze you the extent of Joe's adaptability to his own fuck ups. Because
I'm excited.
I mean, it's just he'd done it so many times before, right? I mean, arguably he had never fucked up on this grand of a scale. Because I mean, this was bad.
This is a pretty epic fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, the crown. This is like his magnus opus fuck up here. And he had survived so many other bad things that had happened. So I don't know why we would think this one would be any different. But like I said earlier, I wanted to speculate on something. Being a fellow history nerd and loving to speculate on what possibly could have happened if, one small detail of church history were changed, or one small history of history, one point of history were changed. What if Joseph would have died from cholera then?
Well, actually, I'll go one further on you, Bryce. If there is one thing Joe should be proud of, the odds-on favorite was that they were all going to die. Like, they were going to get into a shootout and they were going to get wiped out.
Oh, yeah.
Like that. It was so close to happening so many times. And if they would have just stayed a few more weeks traveling, or even days if they were that close, it might have happened anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's that, in and of itself, it's pretty shocking that they weren't just all killed in a gunfight. But then secondly, to your point, well, even if it had just been Joe, let's say they hadn't all got wiped out, he just happened to die of cholera. I think the large parts of the United States would look very different today.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. And
although I don't know, because you did say that there was a bit of a power vacuum left when Joe left, and Brigham had kind of already stepped into it, which I'm excited.
But this is different, though. This is different because Joseph knew that this was a military campaign, and he had basically set Sidney Rigdon up as his successor. He had blessed Rigdon before he left with the keys of running the church. He had made Rigdon basically the dude in charge, either until he got back or in case he didn't get back. So there was no arguing that Sidney Rigdon would have been the proper successor after this. So
okay, so I don't know. Maybe the church would have gone on if, and then they would have just had this. I'm sure they would have spun the story, Bryce, right? That there was this because his army just didn't believe he had to. He knew that because of their disbelief and lack of faith, that all he could do to save his men was to surrender the God's mission, and of course God had to punish him, and so Joe gave his life to save his men, but displeased God, and you could have spun that 100 different ways, right?
Oh yeah.
Hell, that you got a Moses parallel there, right? Mm-hmm. Where sometimes bad things had to happen to Moses's people, and Moses would get in trouble for it sometimes because they were doing bad things. So yeah, it's you can make parallels to things in the Bible and make him look even more pious and more of a martyr for his own people, right?
Oh yeah.
If only we'd been more faithful, maybe our leader would still be with us. It's all our fault. And so I don't know. I think he put me in charge of the PR department. I probably could have spun it the right way. I know. I do think it would have been harder to explain we sent our army out to the God's army is going, and then they all just got poofed. That might have been harder to explain. Yeah. Although I don't know, maybe even that would have resonated. Suddenly you would have had the 200 martyrs, just like the 200 or 1,000 stripling soldiers, the opposite of them. Right?
Let me throw this at you. No, let me throw this at you because after this, in a couple of years after this, we had the Hans Mill massacre, which happened in Missouri, right? And
the story you told me on Dogman.
That's right. Yeah, and all of these were pressures that built up to that happening. I mean,
was that in Missouri too?
That was in Missouri. That was in Clay County or Caldwell County. One of the.
So it might have been some of those poor bastards that got left behind that were in that barn.
I'm pretty sure it was. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure that they were some of the ones involved. And 17 Mormons died in that. I mean, that was a huge, huge thing that went down. Imagine what the persecution complex would be like today if they actually had gone through with it, right? If they actually had come up against a Jackson mob and just gotten slaughtered. Imagine how much Mormonism would have exploded after that. Because it's like, these guys are obviously being persecuted. I mean, David Fitzgerald, I think he was the one that talked about this on the show. A religion needs a certain amount of persecution in order to thrive. Without enough of it, it's not, it's like fertilizer, right? It helps it to grow, but if there's too much, it'll kill the church. So I think that where the church was at the time with how many people were in the church, if it had gone down like that, if it actually had gone down to bullets flying, I think Mormonism probably would have thrived under Sidney Rigdon a lot because they would have been able to turn that into such heavy persecution complex.
Wow. And that's the saddest part of the story. So basically what we're both agreeing is that, this entire thing happened. This whole camp / militia, army, whatever you want to call it. They gathered themselves up. They went through hell for how long? How long were they gone, by the way? Do you have that? It had to be months.
So Joseph they left at the very end of beginning of May 5th. They took off, and then Joseph got back into town on August 8th, I believe.
All right. So several months of this hell, right?
I mean,
lots of them died.
Hell.
Only some got back, and basically we're both agreeing to right now, Bryce, is if that had happened or hadn't happened, didn't really change anything. If they'd all died, didn't really change anything. It's so sad. It was the most pointless venture ever. It didn't even matter what the outcome was, because Joe succeeding was never in the cards, right? That couldn't have happened.
No.
There's no way.
No.
And we commented on the governor couldn't let that happen.
Nope.
He was never going to succeed. And at some point he figured it out and said, okay, this was really pointless. I think we might have rushed into this. And sorry, yeah, we need to go. This is unwinnable.
You have to wonder when that happened, because maybe, just maybe, when he was standing up in front of the congregation, when they had heard the testimony of Parley Pratt and who else was it? And when Joseph decided to actually make this march at the beginning of May. Mm-hmm. You wonder how long after that it took for him to realize that, oh, I fucked myself, right? Because you wonder if it was as soon as he said, I'm going to march to Zion. Maybe he was hoping the people would say, no, you can't go. They'll kill you there. Or, maybe he was saying that just hoping that he wouldn't have to do.
Can you imagine? He's like starting to walk out of the room, and he turns around like, I'm serious. I'm going. Like, don't you guys try to stop me. This isn't a joke. He takes a few more steps like, really, man, not I'm kidding.
Going.
I'm literally going to walk to Missouri. And they're all just nodding like, mm-hmm.
Yep.
God damn it. 1 foot out the door. Oh, damn it.
Hey, you need a couple bucks to for cab fare or something?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so great. You wonder, but no, I wonder if it was then or if it was like the more that people were coming up to them and saying that, hey, we got a big mob waiting. You wonder when that cognitive dissonance really settled in, because it must have been screaming at him when they were huddled down in that Baptist church when the mob was actually trying to cross the Missouri River the Missouri River to try and actually get to them. You wonder what was going through his head at that time, because it couldn't have been good.
Though, and now that you're reminding me of certain details of the story, are we certain that this story isn't exaggerated some? Because some of these coincidences are kind of insane, right? So yeah, it was like they were about to all get killed. Like that, it was just seemed inevitable. And then all of a sudden there was this freak storm that came in, which made it impossible. And the one guy that said he wanted Joe's blood and he was going to get eaten by buzzards in the morning is being eaten by buzzards, right? There was the prophecy about the plague, or that. There was another one I can't remember now, but there were just so many of these coincidences that just sounded like this doesn't sound like I mean, maybe, right? History's weird sometimes, so maybe all of those things happen, but it just sounds like someone wasn't letting truth get in the way of a good story, perhaps, which I respect, but still. Do you know how reliable the sources are that you're reading from?
Well, it's funny that you should ask, because
okay.
I said that most of what we're pulling this from, most of the story I pulled from the history of the church. Of course, I went to a couple of journals and stuff like that, but most of it's from the history of the church. And we know that was Joseph's own dictated history of the church, which he dictated in 1838 and published in 1842. So what we're reading right now, he dictated it 4 years after it actually happened.
And then he had 4 more years to edit it before it was published.
Exactly. And, of course, he was using other journals that other people had, that had available. He was using letters that they had collected at the time that they were sending back and forth, the triangle of letter swapping that was going on. So he was able to reconstruct everything, but everything that we read is all through Joseph's eyes. So you have to say it's like
and quite a bit after the fact.
Yes, well, it's like the Columbus prophecy in the Book of Mormon, right? If the Book of Mormon is a real ancient history and it talked about Columbus coming over and discovering America, that's really amazing, right? To prophesy something like that. But if it's written,
or even calling, describing Jesus Christ, Son of Mary, 500 years before it happened, like that would have been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. But really, if that's written, decades, century, multiple millennia after it actually happened, it's really not that impressive, right?
Really.
The same thing happened here. When something would happen, obviously Joe would take any of these maladies in and, twist them into some sort of teaching or object lesson, teaching opportunity. And he was really good with doing that. And there's a whole bunch of examples that I left out of him doing that, where some malady would happen and he would stand up on a wagon wheel and say, brothers, here's an object lesson. And he would tell them about something about morality. And, he would twist it into his own little thing. Well, when he's dictating this history, when he's telling the story, it's really, really easy to make up revelations that had happened before and then apply them to something that happened after, right? Or prophesy
to,
something, post hoc prophecy.
Quote unquote, forget a revelation that perhaps turned out to be completely false.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So
you can only count the hits, as they say,
right,
when you're telling the story after the fact. Well, I do have to give him credit. He's a good storyteller. It was a fun story. I mean, it had like you said, not only an anticlimactic, but a pretty depressing ending. But it seems like most of the story of Mormonism tends to go along that same line. Really exciting, but it's going to be a sad ending. Like it will be. Just prepare yourselves.
And
it's never a happy ending.
And somebody might say, well, okay, so, it's more valuable to find out, to dig down really deep into this and see what other accounts said, read other journals of what people said, read their incomplete journals on it. And I do agree that is important so we can look at it objectively. But this show, the purpose of this is to reconstruct Mormon history, looking at it through the eyes of the people who were there. And who better to do that through than Joseph Smith, the founder,
Couldn't
right?
agree more.
I mean, there's nobody better to get this firsthand account from than the prophet himself. So that's why I relied so heavily on the history of the church just for this story, because it does have the extra little, the Joseph colored glasses on. You do get to view it through his perspective of he is the one prophet. He is prophesying of the sickness, of the snake bite, of the this, of that, and blah, blah, blah. And, he seems like a much more miraculous person when he's when you look at it through his eyes, I guess.
Then I'll give it to him. There probably was a guy that drowned in the river and buzzards eating him the next day. But when you are telling the story 4 years later, you can easily say, and that was the same man who said he wanted my blood and buzzards would eat me. And I'll give it to him. It does make for a better story.
Doesn't it?
So, good. Yeah, it's fine. Joe had to keep it entertaining for us. And it was all right. And I like the way that you, had a little Sylvester in there for us to give us another perspective. And, boy, I wonder how many lost journals read like Sylvester's. Just like, man, this is some bullshit. How did I get myself here? This is fucked up. Man.
So before closing up Zion's camp, I got to say what happened with the pressures between the Missourians and the Mormons, at least temporarily anyway.
So this is after Joe and his kind of inner circle left.
Yeah. And there were still a bunch of Mormons still living there from Zion's camp that weren't able to return yet.
Before a bunch of them got shot in a barn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a few years before it anyway. But
gotcha.
So you know how I said earlier that the Missourians and the governor and this J.F. Ryland guy, they were trying to propose solutions that everybody could agree on, like having 6 land speculators from the Mormons and 6 from the Missourians travel around together and decide that, they're trying to make it fair. So in reading through all of the terms of all of these agreements, there's a whole bunch of them. The history of the church has all of them in it.
Wow.
The Missourians were proposing this amazingly rational solution that could make everybody happy, and the Mormons kept denying it over and over and over. I mean, multiple times they denied it, 3 or 4 times.
So this is even after Joe and team left? They were still that?
No, that was during the whole march. But then after they left, the Mormons drew up their own agreement. Acid Gilbert was dead at the time, but William Wines Phelps drew up an agreement that was almost exactly like the one that the Missourians were proposing, and got the Missourians to agree to it. And that's how they were able to settle the peace. In reading through the terms and the differences from the earlier ones and the one that Double Dub Phelps proposed, I couldn't see any tangible differences between the two. It looked exactly the same. It's insane.
Bryce, that has happened so many times in history.
Oh yeah,
so many times, where one side will completely turn down the terms of a treaty, and then once they realize that they've lost, then it's like, hey, remember that treaty? We brushed the dust off, and it looks pretty good to us now. What do you guys say?
It's all leverage, right? It's all a matter of who has leverage. Because when you got an army marching on Missouri, the Mormons have a bit of leverage at that time. But when that army is no longer a thing, no longer an existential threat,
pretty hard to say no. Pretty hard to say no.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
As far as I could tell, though, the guns did get returned because that was one of the big sticking points was the guns and some of the goods. The guns got returned.
So this was really a peaceful end. So the guns that the mob took?
Yeah, the mob took the guns. So J.F. Ryland was able to negotiate that with the Missourians that they'd return the guns and the little bit of remaining goods that they had looted from the store and from some of the houses.
Wow.
But I mean, for the most part, they didn't let them settle back in Jackson County immediately, though. So that was a big problem of it too.
So everyone that was living in Jackson County had to leave at this point in the story.
There were no Mormons living in Jackson County at this point. During this whole story, they had all been chased out. They were all living in Clay and Caldwell counties. So it was pretty ugly for the Mormons. You know, they were all homeless at this time. So yeah, I mean, and that just compounds like the uselessness of this entire effort, right? It's like the treaties that they were drawing up before it happened, during the march, and then after the march, they were all basically the same. It's just amazing. So, yeah,
it had to cross Joe's mind at some, like you said, it couldn't have been at the very end. It had to have crossed his mind earlier during this, just kind of the, God damn it, why am I doing this again?
Right? Yeah, totally.
Like, this is a bad idea. I did not think this through. I just did not really think this through.
And that comes out so much when you watch the video that I watched to like introduce myself to it. It's a seminary video, like I said in the first episode, and I'm going to leave it a link to it in the show notes of both of these episodes. And it's like 20 minutes long, I think, 21 minutes. And it really, it like puts faces on all of the people that we just talked about. It really, it gets you to understand the mindset of what was going on. And you kind of, it seems like you can see the transition in Joe's mind of when he was like, yeah, we got this, to, oh, we fucked up. So I think they did capture it pretty well, even if it was just a byproduct that I'm reading into it that they didn't plan on putting in there. So
fair enough.
Yeah, I'd recommend checking it out. It's great.
Well, Bryce, you were correct that before I came on your show, you told me you had a good one for me. And I was going to like it. I was going to enjoy it. And you nailed it. So thank you for knowing me well enough to know, oh, yeah, David's going to like this one. This was a fun ride for sure.
Well, thank you very much. And, it's all about the military history. Like, I love military history so much, and I know that you love it. So why not talk about a military, the first military that Joseph Smith ever raised? I mean,
Commander-in-Chief.
The Commander-in-Chief. He had generals and he had captains. Captain Brigham Young, General Lyman White. I mean, it was pretty fucking legit.
I'm sorry. Brigham Young was in this army?
Yeah, he was a captain. He was one of the captains
Brigham Young. I thought you said he stepped into the power vacuum when Joe left.
No.
I must have mixed that.
No.
So Brigham Young.
That's what I was saying is Joseph Smith had always been relying on Sidney Rigdon and Oliver Cowdery, but those two guys stayed behind in Kirtland. So Brigham Young went with Joseph Smith, and this is when he started distinguishing himself apart from other elders.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to understand a little bit more about the rise of Brigham Young. You didn't bring him up as a character the whole time, but I didn't. This whole time I didn't know he was there.
Yeah, and wow. I just hinted at it at the beginning. I just said, Brigham Young. This was the time that he could step into the power vacuum that was created by Rigdon's and Ollie's absence. So I didn't make that clear enough. But
you know what? I mixed that up in my head. I thought you meant when Joe left, that he left behind a power vacuum in Kirtland. I didn't realize you meant that there was a power vacuum in Joe's inner circle, right? That Brigham Young then snuck into. That actually makes a hell of a lot more sense now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But it was kind of in both respects of it, though. I'm not quite familiar. I haven't started researching the next episode yet, so I'm not sure exactly what was happening with the power vacuum in Kirtland with Joe's absence. I don't know what's going to happen as soon as he gets back and everything. Didn't quite get that far, but this, with Brigham Young going with Joseph Smith on this march, that's when he was able to really be Joe's gopher and really help out Joe. And, he ended up being considered one of the co-leaders of it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So for everyone that has been following along and got that the whole time, you probably think I'm an idiot, but yeah, sorry, missed it. Now I got it.
Yeah. and Brigham Young, this is so you could see this happening with Brigham Young. Like as soon as there was a chink in the armor or there was like a weak link, he could be there to step in and be, that necessary person to fill that vacuum.
Well, I think No Illusion said it best about Brigham Young. One of America's greatest villains that we've ever had. Just a fantastic villain.
Yep, exactly. And I do have to say also a man named Jedediah Grant was also part of this drive, Zion's Camp, and he was known as Brigham's Sledgehammer.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the other one? Hosea Stout. I remember him being one of Brigham's boys.
Ew.
Was he in this?
I didn't see his name in there. He might have been, but I didn't see him in there.
Oh, fair enough.
He could have been.
We haven't really heard his story yet. I just remember you mentioning him a few times.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep. But I think Porter Rockwell was in there too. I didn't mention him at all, but I didn't see his name a single time, but I think he was part of it as well.
Come on, Bryce. Get your research on.
I know. God, I suck. Fucking slacking around here, man. So, David Michael, thank you very, very much for coming on for the second episode in the row. Give us another 30-second elevator speech. Where can people find you if they want to hear more of that sultry, smooth voice?
You just look for My Book of Mormon podcast, or you can just go to mybookofmormonpodcast.com. And, my show is me, obviously ignorant to things Mormonism, which is why I think Bryce likes talking to me about this stuff. But, I read the whole Book of Mormon cover to cover and gave my 2 cents about it as I went. And then we did the Pearl Great Price. And now I have the lovely co-host Bryce Blankenagel, who is helping me read the Doctrines and Covenants. So I'm afraid if these last 2 episodes drove you nuts, if you're like, man, I can't stand listening to these 2 together, don't check out the latest episodes of my show, because that's all it is. It's pretty much what we're doing here while reading the Doctrines and Covenants. Mm-hmm. So, But if you've enjoyed this chemistry we have, then I think you're going to like what we're doing right now. It's been a lot of fun. I think we have fun every time we get together, Bryce. We're just, and I just hope everybody else does too, because I like it.
And that's why I had you on for this one, because I couldn't think of anybody that was more perfect to fill the role of the devil's advocate, I should say. I don't know what role did you play here in these 2 episodes? The uninformed student or what? It was perfect.
I was going to say your dumb friend, but we'll go with uninformed student.
Sure,
much better.
Perfect. But either way,
come on, you set me up a few times during this, and well done. You know me well. You knew exactly how I would fall right into your little trap. Yeah. But anyway, you did it well. I enjoyed the whole ride.
Thank you. And, thanks for adding in your 2 cents. I really, really enjoyed this conversation a lot. I mean, I was completely ignorant to think that we could get through 9 pages of notes in a single episode. Fuck. Are you kidding me?
No, not us.
No.
We've never gotten through 9 pages of anything that we've ever done.
Ever. Well, except for maybe section 20, but that's why it was like a 2.5-hour episode.
God, it was long. Well, I don't know how long this is going to be by the time you're done editing it.
Oh, probably too long.
Love it. And by the way, everyone, we didn't plan for this to be a 2-parter. It was just when we were recording the first time, we obviously started to babble as the wee hours of the morning were rolling in. And I was like, Bryce, I just don't think we're making any sense anymore. We need to stop. So, we decided to pick it up the next day when we were had our wits about us again.
Yes, much better. And we were able to wrap up the story as a whole and, pull people off of the cliff they were hanging off of. So that's what we're here for. But,
by the way, one last question before we go. Is Martin Harris back in Ohio now, or did he get left behind in Missouri?
No, he made the trek back with them into Kirtland.
All right, I was going to say, Joe couldn't leave his dumb old friend behind.
No, of course not. Especially with his bum toe from the snake bite.
Bum toe.
Oh, it's amazing. Anyway, David Michael, thank you very, very much for coming on the show, and I will talk to you next time we're on your show.
You bet, Bryson. I mean this sincerely anytime. It's been a blast.
Awesome. And that is it for the discussion and historical coverage of Zion's Camp. I know that was quite a bit of time spent on Zion's Camp altogether. That was, like 4 hours of content. But there was just so much that happened that was worth discussing, and there's so much more that I took out that I didn't include into this the whole historical coverage of it. So I'll just say that it would be if you're really interested in seeing what this is about, check out the seminary video that I talked about on the last episode and this episode. Of course, there will be a link to it in the show notes. It's just a video that's used for instructional purposes, just in like seminary class to really understand it. And they actually have like it's an actor portrayal of Zion's Camp, and it's well produced. I mean, I have to give the LDS Intellectual Properties Department, a nod, because they really they take it up to the next level. they let's just say when it comes to high production movies and TV shows, the church doesn't fuck around. So kudos to them. But beyond that, reading it out of the history of the church is just fantastic. There's it spans quite a few chapters in the second volume of the history of the church. The coverage of it begins chapter 4 in the history of the church, volume 2. That starts on page 46. That's when it starts introducing the United Order and what was going on with Zion and Kirtland, and then that goes all the way up to I think what I was covering was up to about page 125 or so. So I mean, like I said, there was way more that happened in that whole story that I left out, that I had to leave out just for the sake of time and entertainment purposes. But there's a lot of stories that are, one could say, faith promoting if they read it from a believer's perspective. But also just from when I was reading it, it was just laughter inducing more than anything. So if you want to check that out, you can find the History of the Church, volume 2 online in PDF format. Or produced by the church itself on their own website. And, it's a lot of pages to read, but if you really want to get a sense for what they were going through and the letter exchanges that were going on between the Missouri Mormons, between as well as the Mormons that were marching out in Joseph's camp, and as well as the Missouri leadership and townspeople that were trying to negotiate peaceable terms. So, all in all, it's a really fascinating story. Probably could have done 4 or 5 monologue episodes about it. But I feel like just having somebody that is interested in military history, such as myself, having David on for that was, kind of beneficial just to have a little bit of banter back and forth. If there was something that I said that didn't seem to land right or something that was confusing, it was good to have his voice to say, hey, wait, so what do you mean by that? Or, ask for clarification at the right spots. So, I intend on doing more of these episodes. I mean, not necessarily with David, but with more people, just because it is a lot of fun to have a back and forth discussion talking about a historical topic. I've enjoyed it. I really enjoyed doing it with Noah as well as with David. And, in the future, I'm looking forward to having a couple of other people on for very similar things. Let's see. Beyond that, I wanted to thank a couple people. Looks like we had a new NAMO juvenile delinquent, Heather. Thank you very much, Heather. And then also a new NAMO adolescent rebel up to the next level in the tier, Haley. Haley and Heather, thank you both very, very much for supporting the show. It's deeply appreciated and ensures that I can keep doing this full time. It's amazing that that you guys are awesome enough of an audience to help me do that, to make that a possibility. So that was it for new patrons. Let me do a quick listener mail segment here. Let me just start off with addressing the bit of listener mail that I've received in from the last episode that went up, and that was my discussion with True Believing member Will. So there were a few people that wrote in that were less than pleased with the discussion, feeling like I didn't represent the anti-Mormon side of it. Let me just read a Facebook post on it to, just to illustrate some of the feedback that came in about the episode, because I think that does capture, what kind of happened with the discussion, debate, some might call it. And, I kind of just want to read it off of there. So this was a post by Rob here, and I think he captured some of the frustrations that a lot of people had with the episode. He said, I'm listening to the podcast now, the citing of sources from 1848 and long quotes from some Lancet nut. This Mormon apologist is very deceitful and frustrating to me as a skeptic. He throws out a large number of cited sources in an attempt to deceive the host. Sorry, but he was much better informed than the host. I can imagine that this podcast will be played in every Mormon household for years to come. Sorry, but you've been punked by an experienced Mormon apologist. Again, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to come across as harsh, but we've all been a victim of a plant before in some way or another. Take it as a learning experience. So, I actually am taking it as a learning experience because I thought it was, quite a fascinating discussion. I have to admit, I didn't study up on the anti-Mormon apologetics or the Mormon apologetics in order to study what he was going to be bringing to the table. We kind of did the discussion cold in that sense in discussing what we are going to bring in as far as evidences with Joseph Smith and with the Book of Mormon evidences or lack thereof, I guess. So. That is definitely on me not being practiced up enough to properly debate Will there, but I don't necessarily feel like that was what the point of the show was about. Yes, I found myself as a skeptic frustrated at some things that were going on in the discussion as well, and with the reference to the National Geographic article, that was actually it was 24,000 years old, that Eurasian DNA, instead of 2,500 years old, or however old the Book of Mormon claims that Eurasian DNA would be over here, Western Eurasian DNA would be over here. So with Will trying to use that as an evidence for the Book of Mormon's claims being true, it does a little bit more damage to the claim than actually help Mormon apologists. So I understand that some people could have been not quite pleased with the debate or the discussion, as as I try to keep it. I try to keep it as informal as possible. But that Facebook comment kind of reflected what I received a few emails about, very similar things, people yelling at their radios and whatnot. And I understand, but in all honesty, I have to ask, did it seem like I was being antagonistic towards Will at any point? Because that's not what I wanted to portray at all. I mean, I had no want of scaring him off or chasing him away, or if any believing Mormons listen to that discussion, I want them to feel like they can have a forum or an open podium of honest and open discussion where they can share their ideas, where they can share why they believe what they believe, and bring the evidence to the table that they want. And as long as they're open to standing up to questioning, to scrutiny. And I feel like I didn't drive home questions as hard as I possibly should have. Yes, I understand that maybe there were some things that were said that I should have attacked a little bit harder, but that was not the point of why I was having the discussion, or of why I invited Will on. The main point of why I wanted him on was just to see why he believes what he believes. Because, obviously he's a smart guy. Obviously he's done a lot of research, and there's a lot of stuff that we didn't record that we talked about, with the existence of God, and with, what exactly God is and stuff that didn't seem very pertinent to the discussion about Mormonism. And those discussions were much more enlightening for me to understand the person behind Will, to really understand who Will is and what his beliefs are and where his beliefs lie. We just for the discussion that we recorded, we tried to keep it on Mormon topics, or at least that's what I tried to do, even though we went off the rails a couple of times and went down tangents and rabbit holes. But that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to open this up and offer this field to anybody that does feel like their belief in Mormonism can stand up to critical scrutiny. If anybody is, I invite them to come on and have a discussion with me similar to the discussion that Will and I had, because those are fun discussions to have. It's fun to find out how people are able to rationalize their belief, whether it's in the Book of Mormon Mormon, or it's in Joseph Smith as a prophet, or it's just, a belief in God in general. So, all in all, I appreciate all of the feedback, all of the emails and everything that people took the time to write in about that discussion. And I have to say, as far as discussion episodes go, I think it was one of the more engaging episodes, just for the sheer sake of having a conflict in our belief system, having a disagreement instead of agreeing on something. We disagreed on pretty much everything. So I think having discussions with people that disagree with you is a lot more fun than having just discussions that are like an echo chamber with people that believe everything that you believe. So that's I don't really have any way to justify it, and I don't want to sound like that's what I'm doing here, like I'm trying to justify the discussion, but I'm just trying to explain my perspective of it and why I wasn't antagonistic or, vitriolic against it. I feel like there were a couple times where I could have, gotten riled up in the discussion and said, no, this is ridiculous. How dare you try and bring this evidence in and assert it as, supporting the Book of Mormon evidence. But, I didn't feel like I was in any sort of position to do that, and like it wouldn't have really helped the discussion at all. So, if anybody doesn't really like those, any discussion episodes that have a TBM on the show will have TBM in the title. So, if you don't really enjoy those ones, maybe skip over those episodes. But, for everybody else, if you want to hear that, so you can be familiarized with arguments the Mormon apologists bring to the table, those might be beneficial or as a resource to some people. So, that's an additional reason why I wanted to offer it. I wanted to, I want people to be exposed to some of the arguments that an intelligent Mormon apologist can bring to the table. And let me be clear. If I recall correctly, at no point did he call himself an apologist, nor did I call him an apologist. I mean, I don't think at any point he claimed to be an apologist. I mean, he was making a case for his beliefs, which is, the epistemology of the word, apologia, providing a defense for what you know. But, he didn't really identify as bringing these as apologetics. It was like he believes in God. He believes in the Mormon God, or the God that brought the Book of Mormon to light. And, he's obviously done a lot of research, and he's been able to justify his beliefs in that respect. And that's just, if nothing else, that's really fascinating to me. So to people that posted feedback on that episode, whether it was emails or on the Facebook page, thank you all very much for giving in your feedback. And, what you guys said, I did take into account, and I will be, adjusting my debating tactics a little bit just for future episodes. If anybody does come on and argue a little bit harder than Will does, I feel like I found some links, and I've found some articles that I can use as a proper anti-apologetic to anything that a lot of Mormon apologists might want to bring to the table. So, that being said, let me move on to the next chunk of listener mail here. Got in an email here. The person just said, hey, just wanted to let you know that I put a pause on my Patreon pledge. At this time, I'm currently between jobs. Sorry. And, to the person that sent that email, please don't ever feel like you have to justify dropping Patreon support at any point. I mean, what I'm doing with Patreon is, it's the service is just there. You guys are doing me the favor in signing up to support the show. You guys are. I try not to take any of those pledges for granted, just because they are all just donations, and they are only out of the goodness of the listener's heart. So, to the person that wrote that in, just I appreciate the email. It's not necessary to tell me that you have to stop supporting, but I appreciate the support that you have given up to this point. It has been very, very nice of you. And, to anybody that does need to cancel Patreon or anything, you don't have to send in an email. I completely understand. When I went to full-time podcasting and quit my day job, I had to do the same thing with, the podcasts that I was supporting for that very same reason. So I totally understand. Life happens, situations happen. And, this is just a luxury cost for people people to support. So to anybody that does support it, thank you very, very much. And there's no need to apologize. I don't take those pledges for granted. So yeah, but still, thank you very much. Got in an email from Tony, and I'll just read it off here. He said, I am the only member of my family that has expressed my disbelief. I still go to sacrament meeting with my wife because I know she doesn't want to sit alone. And it does give me the opportunity to see my friends and neighbors for a few minutes each week. It's a very sore subject, capitalized very, in our marriage, and I believe it would totally freak her out if she thought I was supporting anything anti-Mormon. I can't have a paper trail. Do you have a P.O. box or something that I could mail you my support? So to answer that, I don't have a P.O. box set up right now, and after the discussing listener mail segment, I'll tell you guys why. But I'm sorry, Tony. I get in emails occasionally from people that don't believe, or that, they've come to reason themselves out of the church, but they still have to go for family obligations, or they have to stay closeted because of the implications of the negative effects that would have on family relationships. So Tony, I really sympathize with that, man. I'm sorry that you have to deal with that, but eventually, there's something interesting about Mormon history and Mormonism in general. The more you learn about it, the harder it is to believe in it. I feel I sincerely believe that. It doesn't take a whole lot of poking in order for the house of cards to fall down, I think. And with enough persistence, or I don't know the situation, so please don't think I'm trying to give advice or anything, but it seems like with most people's beliefs, enough poking will get them to reason, or at least challenge their beliefs about certain things in the church. I think we could, just in talking with Will last episode, I think we could see that happen occasionally when there were some harder questions about Joseph Smith, and when he was a prophet versus when he wasn't a prophet, and what of his work is inspired versus is not inspired. So I think that's something that is, it can be a frustrating situation, and I am sorry that it is a sore subject in you guys' marriage. But I wish you the best of luck, and just enough persistence and love. I think it's people can go through a transition out of the church, and oftentimes marriages will emerge on the other side stronger. I wish I had a nickel for every time that I've had a discussion with an ex-Mormon couple that said that their marriage is stronger now that they're out of the church. I mean, even on the last TBM Hangout episode, we were talking about that, how marriages and how much better things are once they left the church, because it's like the relationship can be much more real. It doesn't have to have the effect of the church and all of the baggage that contains tacked onto the marriage, because I sincerely believe that only adds more strain to any sort of relationship. Belief in the church tends to drive a division, I think, between couples a lot. Not in the case always, but I think that is the case with a lot of people, especially in cases here with Tony where, one person believes and the other person doesn't. That's rough. I can only imagine that in a relationship. So then he goes on to say that he enjoys the historical episodes better when they're just a monologue instead of having somebody else on to talk about a historical topic. And, Tony, I do agree with you that the monologue episodes are the episodes that I, have the most downloads. Those are the episodes that people come to the show for. And those are still going to be the primary format for the historical episodes. However, it does help out a bit with the other projects that I have going on. When I'm able to bring somebody on and have them, have an open discussion, it's a little bit less work on my part as far as scripting goes. I'm able to just do the research and bring the raw research to the show instead of scripting it out and parsing it through, 20 pages of script per episode. So, it's kind of a catch-22. I may be doing more of the episodes with other people, other podcasters that have some sort of connection or some sort of, personal tie-in to the subject matter. Like David Michael, he's a military history nerd, and, so am I. And this was, the 2 episodes that I had him on for were all about the first military that Joseph ever officially organized. So, that's kind of why I brought him on. And, there will be other people that'll come on that have, personal ties or some special expert knowledge on, whatever the topic is at hand. And that's kind of, it's just, I think in my point of view, it's just a lot of fun to have a little bit of banter, a little bit of talking back and forth, as opposed to just a straight up monologue of just me blabbling for 2 hours straight. So, don't think those episodes are going anywhere. Those that's what most of the historical episodes are going to be. But I will be inviting people on more frequently than I have in the past to talk about historical episodes, just because I have a lot of fun with those. They are really, really fun. So, Tony, I appreciate the email. I wish I could answer it better. I had better answers for it. And that's actually the last email that takes me into the last thing that I need to talk about here. As far as the P.O. box, I don't have anything set up. I wanted to set something up a little while ago, but I'm actually in the process of moving right now. So over the next few months, I have a very, very busy time ahead of me. I'm moving from Colorado to Washington, and then I will be helping my parents move to a new place as well. So I have 2 huge moves coming up in the very near future that are going to be taking a lot of my time. And, unfortunately, there's, I have to devote a lot of time in helping my parents with their move because, physical limitations and whatnot. So I will be spending a lot of time helping them out. So over the next couple of episodes, I may not have the standard of quality that I usually do with the content that I put out, just because it's I'm going to be very, very busy. Anytime you're moving, it's always it's a headache, and I'm making a move 1,500 miles, and it's going to be a lot of work ahead of me for the next few weeks here, I guess about the next month and a half. So. I'm going to try my best to not let the show suffer whatsoever at all. But, still, I hope you guys can understand that it's going to be very, very busy for the next little while. And that's just kind of the reality. So, I just hope you guys understand. I'm pretty sure that most of the listeners have had to move at some point in their life. So you guys understand how frustrating and how much of a headache and how time consuming it can be to move. So, I don't think, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in that case. So anyway, that being said, to contrast how busy the next few weeks are going to be, I did set up the new episode, or the new podcast. Actually, the new podcast is about to go live. The infrastructure is a baseline infrastructure is set up for it, and this episode will be dropping on Thursday. Today's March 31st. And the new podcast will be airing on April 4th. That is when the first 2 episodes of it will air for all listeners, not just Patreon supporters, all listeners. It's going to be the brand new podcast. And just to give a little bit of detail on it, what it is a podcast reading some of the possible source texts of the Book of Mormon. If you listen to the 7.5 hour anniversary episode, the Book of Mormon episode, you'll know that there were a couple of books so I talked about that are very, very similar to the Book of Mormon in a lot of ways, one of which is the Late War of 1812. One is the First Book of Napoleon. And this secondary podcast is going to be just that, reading those books, compiling the research that has all of those connections between those books and the Book of Mormon, and then pointing out the similarities as I happen upon them. So I have a few episodes of those saved up in the bank, and those are going to be airing weekly over the next few weeks. There is a Patreon page set up for it as well. And if anybody feels like the show is good enough and wants it to continue, and feels like it can be the start of something, a bigger project, then your Patreon support would be very appreciated. Now, I did say that I've set up a very basic infrastructure. I have the website up, and the podcast is it will be hosted on Monday and will be on iTunes on Monday for open download. But there's going to be something, a secondary project wrapped up into that. And that's also what I'm working on with a web developer. We're going to put together a website that you can read not just the Book of Mormon, but the 1830 Book of Mormon, as well as the current day Book of Mormon. And, I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but I want it to be a hub of research where people can, look at the text of the Book of Mormon and look at the text of some of these other books and see the similarities. It's still very early on in the formative stages right now, and it's a work in progress, but that's what's going to be developing over the next few months as the podcast progresses and as more episodes of the new podcast goes up. So if you want to find that, be on the lookout for that on Monday, April 4th. It is called the Glass Box Podcast. It's registered under just Glass Box Podcast, and that's how you can find it. The logo is going to probably change. The logo that is on it right now, or when you download it, is just one that I've created. But there will be there will be better stuff going into it very, very soon as more infrastructure is built up for it. But it is going to be live on Monday, and 2 episodes are going to go up for debut, and it will be a weekly podcast after that, going out on every single Monday. Monday evening, and that's going to be the schedule. Thursday nights this show comes out, the mother show, and then on Monday nights the sister podcast, the Glass Box Podcast, will be airing, and they're both weekly podcasts now. So to contrast how busy my life is going to be for the next few months in moving myself and moving my parents, I'm starting up a second podcast, so that's going to be a lot of fun too. I like to just pile the work onto myself and see what happens. So yeah, that being said, if anybody does want to check it out, that's the place to find it, glassboxpodcast.com, on iTunes or Stitcher. It will be listed on both of those. Stitcher will probably come out later than iTunes because their hub is their portal is a little more confusing and tough to deal with than iTunes is. But it's still going to be going up on Monday. And, patreon.com/glassboxpodcast. That's where you can support the show if you would like to support it on a per episode donation basis, much like this Naked Mormonism show is set up. So the podcast is in early stages. I would really like to have some feedback on it. There is a Gmail set up, glassboxpodcast@gmail.com. And that's where you can get in touch with me about that show specifically, or you can go to glassboxpodcast.com and submit a contact form there, and that'll go to that same email. So that being said, I think that's everything I had to cover for this episode. Been blabbling for like 10 minutes here about nothing, and I'm excited. That's the main thing to get across here is I'm excited for this new podcast to air, and all in all, what the end all game of this is, I would like to include the data that is collected based off of the secondary podcast here. I'd like to try and collect all of that data and include it as a maybe like a second edition of the Book of Mormon book or something. But that's much further on down the road. But that's kind of an end goal of it. And see, I feel like there's going to be a lot of data collected once all the infrastructure is set up for the Book of Mormon website and whatnot. So. Needless to say, there's a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm trying to decide which one is hottest and which one to strike on first. So that's it for this episode. Before finishing up tonight, I had to thank a few people. Thanks to David Michael for providing his voice for the intro to this episode. If you'd like to hear more from him, you can check him out on mybookofmormonpodcast.com. Obviously, he was the guy that was interviewed in this episode and the last historical episode. You guys probably are way too familiar with David Michael's voice now anyway. Thank you so much to Demonista for running the Facebook page and putting up all kinds of memes and quotes and awesome articles that are going on with Mormon news topics and whatnot. So if you want to check out the Facebook page, I recommend it. There's a lot of fun discussion going on over there. Thank you very much to Jason Camo for providing the music that is going into your ears right now. If you'd like to hear more of his music, check him out at aloststateofmind.com. Thank you very much to all of the patrons who support the show, and for anybody that writes in at nakedmormonism@gmail.com. If you'd like to get in touch with me about the show, or have any questions or comments or death threats, you can always send those over to that Gmail address. Thank you so much to all of you beautiful listeners for lending me your ear. I hope to talk at you next time here on the Naked Mormonism Podcast.